And before we start the meeting, we do have interpretation services in the back. I'd like to call the meeting of the Tucson Unified Governing Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Romero?
Here.
Dr. Ravi?
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Present.
Ms. Shaw?
Present.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Here. We'll wait a little bit for the land acknowledgement statement. Okay. Agenda adjustments, Dr. Trio? Okay.
As President Ekstrom, members of the governing board, I'd like to move item 9.1 directly following the call to the audience. I know we've had several speakers waiting for that in past meetings. I'd move it up.
Okay, great. Next is our land acknowledgement statement, and that'll be given by Baker Mobley. Baker attends Sam Hughes Elementary School. He just finished 3rd grade and is moving into the 4th grade. Baker is an avid basketball fan and was proud to be part of the Sam Hughes basketball team that won the TUSD Elementary Championship this year. His favorite NBA team is the Oklahoma City Thunder, SGA. Baker also sings in the OMA choir, plays piano, and enjoys reading, swimming, and spending time with his friends. So go ahead, Baker, whenever you're ready.
On behalf of the Governing Board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Baker Mobley, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribe land of the Pascua Yaqui tribe.
Thank you, Baker. And if you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, he will also be doing the pledge. So whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is game 3 tonight, Baker? Tomorrow. Good thing, because you're going to be a little bit late, so thank you. Next is the superintendent's report. Dr. Trujillo.
President Ekstrom, members of the governing board, members of the community, all of you watching us online. Just a couple of items tonight in the superintendent's report. It was an absolutely wonderful graduation season. I want to thank Principal Alberto Rangel for inviting me to graduation at University High Schools. I had an opportunity to attend University High School's graduation ceremony. Such a wonderful opportunity to share such a special moment with our UHS parents and our UHS community. I also had the opportunity to attend Innovation Tech High School and the graduation of its actual official first 4-year class. So very, very proud to attend that graduation. I want to thank governing board member Val Romero. He was out there representing the TUSD governing board at that ceremony. Absolutely amazing graduation season. 2,517 total 12th graders graduated from TUSD high schools. University High School graduated 202, and Innovation Tech graduated 70. First class of 4-year students at University High School. Earlier this month, we held our final professional development for principals and assistant principals and curriculum service providers at the Howenstein Education Center. We had some engaging sessions around a new approach to customer service, also talking about the work that we're doing with our community healthcare workers around substance misuse awareness and prevention, and a very, very inspiring session led by Brett Bowers, one of our expert avid practitioner consultants, and a wonderful lunch provided to all for all of our principal site administrators and our curriculum service providers. Last week, I had an opportunity to address the attendees of our culturally responsive, our pedagogy and instruction department through the Summer Institute for Culturally Responsive Education, hosted by our culturally responsive pedagogy and instruction department under the direction of Director Lorenzo Lopez, The two-day event offered engaging keynote speakers and breakout sessions focused on culturally relevant teaching practices and celebrating the successes that our district has seen, as now thousands of students take culturally relevant courses in English language arts and social studies across the district. We had some wonderful keynote speakers, former governing board member and county supervisor, and of course now congressional candidate Adelita Grijalva, followed by Dr. Leslie Gonzalez, talking about her own journey before becoming a tenured professor at the University of Arizona, and then award-winning researcher and author Dr. Francesca Lopez. So I want to thank the CRPI department for putting together such a wonderful event. And lastly, McGee Middle School. I want to congratulate McGee Middle School for their extraordinary performance at the Odyssey of the Minds World Finals at Michigan State University. All four of its competing teams placed in the top 20 globally within their respective categories. The competition challenges students in key four areas: structure, lightweight balsa wood structures designed to hold hundreds of pounds; the technical category, with performances incorporating complex technical devices; the dance and the performance category, featuring original stories with originally developed characters and originally created costumes and choreography; and then the vehicle category, featuring student-built vehicles performing designated tasks during a creative presentation. McGee has proudly sent World Finals teams every single year since 2004. It is a record unmatched by any other Arizona school. McGee is synonymous with excellence at Odyssey of the Mind competitions, and we congratulate them for their wonderful performance. And lastly, our TUSD Food Services Department is continuing its commitment to student wellness through the 2025 Summer Food Services Program. Free breakfast and lunch meals will be served to children at participating school and non-school sites throughout the summer. Importantly, meals are available not just to students enrolled in summer programs, but to any child 18 or younger in the surrounding neighborhood. Families can visit meals.tusd1.org or call 520-225-4700 for site-specific schedules and information. Of course, it should be noted there is no meal service on two upcoming holidays: the district's observance of Juneteenth on June 19th, and of course the 4th of July holiday. Thank you, President Extra, members of the governing board. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Next is called to the audience, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, President Extra. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience. The governing board clerk shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and for maintaining order where it may be appropriate. Those who speak in person or want to have their comments read shall email or call the board office or complete a request to address the board form before the meeting. Speakers who have not completed a request form are not permitted to address the board. The speaker must state their full name and topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time of 3 minutes. While more than one speaker may speak together in the time allowed, speakers are reminded that they are not allowed to speak more than once, and they may not transfer or delegate their time to others. If there are documents for the board, please give them to the board office staff, and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and or speaking before the board shall observe rules of good conduct. Speakers shall also refrain from inappropriate or slanderous remarks. Then, because TUSD serves students from preschool through high school, speakers should be aware there may be children present and listening. At the end of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if any board member wishes to respond to criticism, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. No more than 2 members may address each topic. Contents of this card are public information. We have 3 in-persons, and we have 4 to be read, and we'll start with Tracy Anderson, followed by Sylvia Campoy, followed by Lillian Fox. So Tracy Anderson, you're first.
Hello, thank you board members and Dr. Trujillo for hearing me today. I am here, as you can tell, I wasn't planning to be here, but I'm here to shed some light on a situation I don't know if everybody is aware of. So I am an 8-year veteran teacher of TUSD. I've spent the last year as a CSP at an Eastside middle school, and I realized that I really wanted to get back into the classroom, but I really wasn't sure what I was thinking I wanted to do. Well, with that in mind, on March 7th, I informed my principal that I was going to go back into a pool. And then on May 19th, fast forward, I was given a form to sign real quick. So I signed this form, not really understanding it. I decided not to give it back to her just yet because it said the word separation on it. And I reminded her that I wasn't planning to leave the district. I was planning to change positions. I just wasn't sure where yet. I then reached out to HR and to the employee relations to find out, yes, I had to fill out this form in order to release the CSP position for hiring, but there's no other way to do it. I explained I wasn't planning to leave the district, and so through conversations with HR, I was able to have them tell me that they would just they would hold back on processing. So as I found my position on Friday, actually, confirmed it on Monday, I emailed my contact at HR to find out that that person had forgotten to hold back my separation and processed it. And this was about 2 hours ago. And he informed me that he couldn't tell me if it was given to you for approval today or if it was going to be processed on the 15th. And I informed him that I wanted to do the resend, that I had done some research on the internet, and I saw that form was there. So I'm here for two purposes. One, I have no idea if I'm currently employed into USD as of right now. And if you see my name on that, I hope you will not approve it. Second, I don't know if there's something that you guys can do to reevaluate the process that you take to take employees out of a position to allow for hiring while not terminating them while they look for another job. So right now, my future with TSD is completely up in the air, and I just started the process to buy a house, my first house, that is now in the process of who knows. So my request to you is to please do not approve it if you see my name here today, and to maybe find out how you guys can go about changing this process so nobody else is affected like this. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next is Sylvia Campoy, followed by Lillian Fox.
I'm Sylvia Campoy. I stand before you as a former TUSD student, teacher, speech therapist, administrator, governing board member, parent, taxpayer, student advocate, and former Mendoza Plaintiffs representative of 20 years. I say all of that to express my love for TUSD. I'm a critic, but I'm a critic that stands back and wants it to improve. I have vivid memories as a TUSD teacher and speech therapist of driving to 1010 to speak with the Director of Special Education, Dr. Mary Meredith, about another student who had been wrongly placed at our school, Ganun, many, many years ago, based on race or on being non-English speaking, or about an African-American student who had been placed on my caseload as a speech therapist due to his black dialect. I did not need to make an appointment. I did not get put off. I was never informed that I had to go through a specific process to remedy the problem. The district had more than 20,000 more students than it does now. But red tape did not strangle teachers, speech therapists, or parents. They were served by this board, different members, and by the superintendent, different superintendent. Dr. Meredith would immediately fix whatever problem was taken to her. The door was always open, and the same was true for every single other director at 1010. Remember, it had 20,000 more students then than now. She saw a pattern of problems of kids being misplaced in special education, and she formulated a task force filled with special ed teachers, regular ed teachers, and some administrators. The problem was nearly fixed. We've gone backwards. The district was far from perfect back then. but most leaders were willing to do what was needed to remedy the situations that surfaced. Today, I do not know of a single teacher who has the same type of access to a top-level administrator as I had back then, with less than 20,000 students today. What's the problem? What gets in the way of communication? Parents have gone left on their own, parents have been left on their own now without any advocacy. TUSD has never been perfect, as I said, but there were eras when those at 1010 and on the board attempted to address and remedy problems and did what was possible to strengthen communication. I certainly do not witness such efforts, nor do dozens of employees and parents who share their thoughts with me. Today I'm here to primarily ensure that my words become part of the record. Maybe someone will pay attention. But I trust that little of what I'm said is actually heard. I will be back to speak during the public hearing.
All right, next is Lillian Fox.
My name's Lillian Fox, and I'm here to talk about the budget again. If you just skip the first page and turn to this one, you only have two responsibilities as a board. One is to oversee the hiring and firing of employees. The other one is to oversee the spending of TUSD's money. You're being cut out of them. You're not being allowed to participate. This is what all budgets should start with. This is the staffing formula. It comes out every year. He never showed it to you last year, and I don't know if he's going to show it to you this year. You're supposed to look at this and figure out things like, what size classes do you want? One of you told me she already knew the class sizes are too big based on her own experience. Well, here's what we've got. A kindergarten teacher has 26 kids in their class. My niece teaches in South Carolina. Her classes, she's a first grade teacher, kindergarten to first grade range from 16 to 22. And when I told her it was 26 here, she said, "You're kidding me. Do they have a teacher's aide?" Because when they have 22 in South Carolina, they have a teacher's aide. This is the start of why this school district fails to educate kids. The classes are too big, especially at the lower levels. Tennessee did a 10-year-long study of the effect of class sizes because they said it's too damn expensive to have small class sizes. So we got to make sure they really work. They really work. If you have small class sizes in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, maybe third grade, it'll last for years. It gives kids a big step up. Middle school, teacher has 160 kids because they have 5 classes. High school, they got 165, too many. Do you have any idea how long it takes to grade that many papers every week? It's impossible. Now, other thing, 2014, the board voted unanimously to lay off all the librarians, except for high school. They had no idea what they were doing because the CFO didn't point it out to them. It was in the paperwork, but they didn't know. They only found out afterwards. Okay, they also got rid of library assistants, so that means you got professional librarians checking out books because you can't have kids do it because it gives kids access to other people's personal information. Now, down here, the big pink stuff, the board's hiding stuff from you. The reason they're doing it is they don't want you to know how few custodians we have and how few monitors we have. The staffing formula for monitors is 1 monitor per 600 kids. That's out of this world. That's why we have such horrific problems with bullying. We don't follow any of the industry standards for staffing for custodians, which is why if you look at the school quality services or surveys, many, many students and a lot of teachers say the school's filthy. You just don't have enough custodians. Teaching supplies, turnover.
Time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Next page.
All right, and we have, any way to make the timer beep? I'm gonna be rereading and won't know where we're at. All right. Just yell at me. All right, next we have 4 to be read. First is by Anna Badia, to be read, Guns, Tasers, Batons, and Pepper Spray, Tucson High Magnet School. Dear Governing Board members, with the deadline of the budget approval just around the corner, I am asking you to remove a purchase that will be listed on the budget prior to approval. I simply want to bring your attention to a financial waste that is being covered up by leading language and creative budgeting. I'm asking you to deny the purchase of and it breaks off here, next paragraph. Allow me to give you a small part of my professional experience that gives me personal knowledge of this subject. I was a Pima County juvenile detention officer for 5 years prior to coming to TUSD. I was part of the team that would have to go in and restrain minors when acting out, causing a disturbance, those who were not inciting a riot or who could have become a danger to themselves or others around them. This is the exact same population we serve at TUSD. Only supervisors were allowed to utilize batons, tasers, or pepper spray. Those items were locked in a secure area. Tasers and batons were only on hand if there was an adult issue or imminent danger. They are not legal to use on minors unless they are dire circumstances. I am not comfortable with having such damaging weapons on our campuses. Please keep in mind that our school safety officers are only called officers because that is what TUSD wants to call them. They're actually school safety representatives. Peace officers need to be certified by the Arizona Peace Office Standards and Training Board, AZPOST. $300,000 are being allocated to purchase tasers and batons for approximately 2 dozen school safety officers. Please remember that they are not TPD, PCSD, nor DPS, and are not required by state law to follow the same specific regulations and trainings. I would like to know why TUSD is willing to attempt to have these weapons on our campuses. Persons under the age of 18 are not allowed to carry or possess this type of weapon that can incapacitate someone. Why should TUSD be allowed to use or carry these on our campuses? Firearms are only to be used when you or someone else is in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm. Only when it is necessary to defend yourself or others. With the way our nation is suffering from mass shootings, not only in schools but in other public areas, I understand why this item is important to carry and get regular training on. Pepper spray, or more commonly known as mace or OC spray, are used by officers to subdue violent individuals and reduce the need for more dangerous force options like batons, tasers, or firearms. The use of mace will cause a burning sensation and at times temporary blindness. Once properly washed off and rest, the persons are back to normal. Back to batons. Although there is a population from 18 to 20-year-old students that we do serve, the overwhelming population we serve are under the age of 18. Will you be able to distinguish if someone is 17 years and 11 months old versus 18 years or older? It is impossible to be exactly sure, especially in the heat of the moment. A baton, when used as... Okay, time is up. Thank you. All right. Next is from Joshua Chuk, to be read, Gate Services, ALE Gate Budget. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Joshua Chuk, and I come before you as both a district employee, as an itinerant gate teacher, but more importantly, as a parent of a gifted child in our district. My daughter was offered placement in a self-contained gifted program which, on the surface, promises full-time gifted instruction across core subjects. However, through my role, I've learned that most of the teachers at the self-contained sites are not gifted endorsed, which raises significant concerns. According to the Arizona State Standards, students identified as gifted are entitled to instruction from appropriately endorsed educators who understand their unique cognitive, social, and emotional needs. While these teachers may be strong educators, the absence of proper endorsement means the students are not receiving the level of differentiated instruction they deserve. This is not just a technical issue, it is an equity issue and a compliance issue. I'm also deeply concerned by the news that funding for teacher endorsements in gifted education is being reduced in the upcoming budget. This signals a step backward in our commitment to excellence and to our gifted learners. As a parent, it is troubling to think I might move my child to a program advertised as gifted, only to later realize she is not receiving the services promised. I encourage the board to reconsider the following. 1, reinstate or increase funding for gifted endorsement opportunities to ensure all teachers in self-contained classrooms meet the state's expectations. 2, ensure transparency with families so that parents make critical education decisions, are fully informed about who is delivering instruction. 3, phase in compliance plan, requiring all gifted teachers in self-contained settings to be endorsed within a set time frame with district support. Our gifted children deserve more than just a label. They deserve educators equipped to help them thrive. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to all students. Next, we have Jana Hamilton, items 6.1, 7.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 9.1. Few, if any, parents and students have been involved each time the administration and governing board decides to change or create a policy, fund, or defund programs and services. The administration and board have never been more isolated and distant from those who they serve. Let me stress that visiting schools and attending ceremonies, galas, etc. is not considered parent and community engagement. The June 10, 2025 agenda provides examples of how detached the TUSD administration and board have become from their primary stakeholders, parents, students, and the community. There has been no visible effort to engage parents, students, or community members on agenda items 6.1, 7.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 9.1. And if there has been, it was by individual invitation only. Have you noticed that school is not in session right now and is no time to make decisions that impact students to the degree that each of these agenda items will? I can hear the rationale from Gabe Trujillo, Ricky Hernandez, and the attorneys that TUSD posted notices on his website so that the public is invited to provide feedback on policy changes, textbook adoptions, and desegregation budget, etc. But you all know better than this. Parents should not have to repeatedly check the TUSD website to learn about public hearings, etc. One-renovations do not work, and individuals have to be provided with an inviting framework that includes a human element to become motivated to engage. Parents and students are the primary customers of TUSD, while community members are the secondary level of customers as property owners whose taxes support TUSD. However, it seems that TUSD has shut its doors to its customers as if they are a nuisance. If I had more than 3 minutes, I would be able to engage and provide you with meaningful feedback. However, here is my time-limited feedback. Item 6.1 is the appointment of Tucson High Magnet School principal, which Gabe Trujillo has decided to retain as an interim for the second consecutive year. Tucson High Magnet School is a majority-minority school, which as a school has been marginalized by the lack of prioritization to hire a qualified person as principal. I doubt he would pull such a stunt if it involves Sabino, Saguaro, or University High. It is disgraceful. Item 7.1 is a public hearing on the desegregation budget. I have spoken to 9 parents and none of them knew that there was a desegregation section to look for on the website. How often are parents supposed to check the website in order not to miss the notice of public hearings? It is a ridiculous way to notify and engage parents. Item 8.2, Code of Conduct. The administration recommends lowering the level of the violation of sharing tobacco and alcohol. Not too long ago, the district was awarded $10.6 million from an electronic cigarette company for advertising to minors. The lawsuit provided a wealth of evidence from TUSD about the ills of tobacco, which is now being contradicted by the decreasing level of violation. It appears to contradict the legal arguments. Thank you. Okay, and the final letter comes from Beth Putnam Hidalgo, Desegregation Budget 7.1. Dear members, Dr. Trujillo and Mr. Hernandez, looking at the proposed cuts to the desegregation budget, one can see the district commitment to the goals of the over 40-year-long desegregation case, 0. Once again, there is very scant information provided on the impacts of the cuts on students and families affected. This is particularly evident in the cuts to family engagement, already an area where the district record is not good. The idea here and elsewhere that this work can just be taken over by other uncompensated, in some cases, personnel, implies that there are people sitting on their hands at the schools just waiting for the opportunity to reach out to families. We know that this is not true. The same logic goes for the glib dissolution of the EDI department, whose responsibilities now are apparently spread district-wide and integrated into other departments' responsibilities. The whole point of the desegregation case was that no one was worrying about equity until they had to, and it's not at all clear that the 40 years in between has changed that. Everyone in the system has more work than they can do as it is. Asking them to handle EDI or family engagement will surely have a negative effect that families feel. Particularly now, with the government hunting down many of your families, it seems completely unacceptable to reduce the school-community relationships that can offer at least a small feeling of safety in an unsafe time. In short, there are strong and unmet requirements for impact analysis when DSEG funding is adjusted. In this budget, we receive a line or two that does not indicate how students will be affected. DSEG funding relies on maintaining the programs and goals that were once under court oversight. In many places, this budget does not fulfill that requirement. Family engagement, equity, tutoring. These programs are crucial. Hopefully one day TUSD will recognize and honor that. That's Putnam Hidalgo. Madam President, that concludes our call to the audience. Oh, there's one more. All right, next we have Guadalupe Henninger, Code of Conduct. Is that to be read or?
Oh, she's here.
Oh, she's here, okay.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Guadalupe Heininger, and I would like to speak about item 802, Code of Conduct. Proposed revisions for the 2025-2026 school year. Under this new administration, executive order states are rethinking school discipline, but we need to think about students' constitutional rights. The first time I spoke about the Code of Conduct, it was in 2017 when we were trying to change the school-to-prison pipeline and create a more restorative Code of Conduct. These are hard times for all our students. They're going through, it's taking a toll on our students' emotions and have set off an avalanche of depression, anxiety, and insomnia. Our children are the casualties of downturn economies, wars, poverty, lack of clean air and clean water, lack of nutrition, lack of social media guardrails, and the zero tolerance unconstitutional immigration policies and lack of due process. They worry about the dismantling of our constitutional rights. Our Constitution, which is the law of the land, calls for checks and balance, separation of powers, and due process. Our founding fathers created a separation of powers so no one person or one group have all the power. Article 1 said Congress, which is the Senate and the House, make laws. Article 2 said the president executed the laws. Article 3 said a judicial system, which are the courts, make sure that laws and actions of the government are under our constitution, are constitutional. We are, like I said, our children are the casualties of downturn economy. Right now, we need to call the House, the GOP-led House of Representatives, and the GOP.
Time.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Time up?
Yes. That concludes the call to the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. Would anyone like to address any members to the call to the audience? Ms. Luna Rose and then Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, President Ekstrom, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming out on a hot evening. Stay hydrated. I would like to address Ms. Anderson. Thank you for coming, and I know you were nervous, I could tell, but you did a good job. I would like, Dr. Trujillo, if, now I looked at the consent agenda and I did not see her listed.
Ms. Anderson, you are not on the list, and we certainly will rectify the situation first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay, and I would just like to say, you know, I'm sorry that this happened, because you want to stay in TUSD and you want to teach in our classroom, and I want to make sure that we're keeping you here. So thank you for bringing that to the board and, you know, giving a chance for departments to review perhaps the policies and procedures. So I appreciate that. That is, oh, and I just also want to mention to Ms. Hedinger, thank you so much for coming. I know sometimes it's nervous for you to come up there. I would really appreciate you. So thank you.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who came to speak today. I was going to second what Ms. Luna Rose said, that Ms. Anderson, you are not on item 5.2, and if staff can review that matter, and so that there's no other employee that is has to deal with that when they're trying to change positions within our district. I would also like to ask staff to send the board some of the information regarding the purchases of the tasers and batons. I didn't catch that writer's name, but I know that our school safety officers are trained. I'm not sure if it's with the AZ police officer standards, but if we can get some more information about that, that would be great. Yeah, thank you.
Any other board member? No? Okay, thank you everybody for coming to call to the audience. Next on the agenda is item 9.1, and that is the Exceptional Education Related Service Provider Study Session. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to welcome Dr. Salmon, Maricela Mesa, and I believe we have Mr. Byrne? If we do have him. Okay. Okay, I think he's expecting the invitation, and he'll pop on and as soon as we can. So over the last couple of meetings, you know, we've been hearing at the call to the audience some of the concerns from our related service providers, and for those of us watching, those are occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, and our physical therapists. And so Ms. Mesa from Employee Relations has worked collaboratively with Mr. Byrne and Dr. Salmon, and of course our RSP community to put together tonight's presentation, really designed to give the public and the board an overview of the roles and responsibilities of the different positions within the related service provider community, as well as metrics in terms of the number of students they see and the like. So with that, I'll turn it over Dr. Salmon, Ms. Mesa, and we'll welcome Mr. Byrne as soon as he jumps on Zoom.
Good afternoon, governing board members, President Ekstrom, Clerk Shaw, Dr. Trujillo, and Council Ross. And so, yes, there's been a lot of collaboration going into this presentation today. And so just the purpose of this is to provide an understanding of our various roles. I know in exceptional education, we use a lot of alphabet soup. We just want to make sure that everybody understands the language in our present situation. Again, the related service providers are speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. The acronyms for those are SLP, OT, and PT. We also want to examine the working conditions. That includes information about the number of students that they're servicing, as well as the minutes that each student has on their IEPs, and to provide an update on funding options, and to look at some potential improvements for each of these areas. Okay, next up, this is some employee relations information. And so Ms. Mesa will just give a little bit of background on this current slide.
Thank you, President Ekstrom, governing board members, employee relations, ExEd department, and TEA have been working together. TEA, their names are on this item. Some are at a rally and are going to appear virtually, and are very excited. I did offer to ask for this item to move later, and they wanted it to happen right now. So that's why we're moving forward with this. To give you a little bit of background, there's been a lot of discussion as of late about caseload numbers, caseload caps. Right now, there isn't a widely used state model to glean off of. So there has been a commitment made with the individuals who are representing the related service providers to come together to work on sort of a workload management, a workload management system that would inevitably have some sort of cap to it and understanding of what the workload looks like. But because of the different nuances of the caseloads themselves, it's going to take a little longer. So there's a commitment for this year to move forward on that. It will be worked collaboratively with the TEA, Joint TEA TUSD Exceptional Education Subcommittee on RSPs. So we're working on that, but if there are people who want to provide feedback, please contact Dr. Salmon, myself, or the TEA members. And also Dr. Salmon has talked about sending a survey so we get feedback from all employees, even if they're not in the regular room meeting. There have been requests about funding to look at what can be done to address the need and the workload. So we're going to be looking at Medicaid and work collaboratively with the finance department on that. There have been a number of informal discussions, but I believe we have gotten into our groove with our subcommittee to create action plans moving forward. And hopefully we'll be able to come back to you around this time next year with more formal plans.
All right, and so this is just some background information for when we started to work with TEA on this topic. I don't think we have TEA on yet, so I'll go over this information. So we started to look at this topic in November, and so there was a meeting about Medicaid funding and what's available and how much our related service providers are contributing to the funds that the district receive, as well as if there's options to provide some support for other things with that funding allotment.
Mr. Byrne? There you go. We see you, Mr. Byrne. Okay, you're nodding. That's a good sign. So your slide is up. Would you like Dr. Salmon to continue speaking to the slide and then you comment after, or would you like to go ahead and move forward discussing the slide? I know it's difficult in the car. We can't hear you. So in the interest, everyone worked collaboratively. Everyone worked collaboratively on this PowerPoint. So I would recommend Dr. Salmon move forward, and then if Mr. Byrne have any commentary afterwards, that might be the best way to move things forward. And I just got a thumbs up on that. So.
Awesome. So yes, we did have a committee meeting. We went over the slides and then we sent them out again for everyone who participated to review it. Okay, so again, the meetings began in November with discussion about Medicaid funding and what might be done with some other resources. If we could get. He's unmuted. Okay. So is there something you want to add, Mr. Byrne?
Just that we appreciate, the openness and collaboration on part of Dr. Salmon in particular, and EXED district leaders, as well as the superintendent and other staff necessary to have some conversations, get the information that the related service providers group was requesting in a timely fashion and in an understandable way so that we could all get on the same page.
Thank you. Okay. Great. I can't click. I think we're waiting for that to be minimized. I can't advance the slides. Awesome. Okay, and so this is a summary of speech and language pathologists. So the key functions of our speech and language pathologists is to give students access by giving them a voice, a way of communicating. And so these are just some of the primary roles. So our speech and language pathologists provide the language screening and support. They do evaluations and assessments. They also are able to serve as case managers for students who have speech and language only as their primary eligibility for exceptional education services. They also provide related services with speech. And so they are just in a unique role as being the primary evaluator as well as a related service provider and a case manager. So they provide goals and they provide interventions and services to work toward helping students achieve those goals. And so just some of the examples of the work they do is they help with articulation. They certainly support students who are having difficulty producing letter sounds. They provide support with stuttering. They also provide social skills and social cues. We see this quite often if there's a student who experiences some neurodiversity or some of our students who have autism who need some additional language supports. And again, those are our speech and language pathologists. Next, we have our occupational therapist. And so our occupational therapists really provide that support with fine motor movement. So things that we use our fingers to do primarily. So that could be writing, that could be typing, that could be feeding ourselves, that could be buttoning our clothes, or just having access to that environment that way. So some of the primary roles are just providing that access to the school environment for our students. They are related service providers, so they have IEP goals that are dedicated to fine motor skills as well as sensory needs. They also provide recommendations for adjusting the classroom environment. So they really are looking at like sound, they're looking at lighting, they're looking at other sensory items and access that may be impeding a student's access to participate fully in the curriculum. And so some examples of what they do, again, would be just assisting with those fine motor movements. From meeting with our occupational therapists, they want everybody to know that they do more than support handwriting. And so we'll make sure that everybody realizes what they do is more encompassing. Some of the things that we also notice with the sensory needs could be some students may need more sensory input or they may need less sensory input in the learning environment. Next up, we have our physical therapists. So our physical therapists are responsible for that gross motor movement. So things such as walking, standing, climbing stairs. And so they are really there to provide that access to the physical environment. Their primary roles include accessing that environment. They provide recommendations for devices or equipment that gives students that level of access. They provide goals. They provide intervention and services to help students work toward reaching those goals. They provide consultation for many of our staff members. A lot of our physical therapy support and services are indirect, which means it's not a physical therapist working directly with the student. And so our physical therapists work really hard and collaboratively with physical education teachers to come up with supplemental curriculum and materials that could be implemented by our gen ed PE teachers, as well as in our self-contained classrooms. Our self-contained teachers often implement that adaptive curriculum for PE. And again, the walking, the standing, the accessing the cafeteria, the playground, the bathroom are some of the things that our physical therapists are responsible for supporting. Okay, this is some information about staffing, our numbers, and our caseloads, and our current vacancies. Okay, for our speech and language pathologists, we have more information about them because they're a larger group in TUSD, as well as they have larger numbers throughout Pima County and across the state. And so we have 76 speech and language clinicians, and so some of those are clinical fellows as well as speech and language assistants. We have a lead speech and language pathologist. And this is just showing our caseload ranges. So our caseloads range from 50 to 60 students. And so that's 10 to 12 students per day that our SLPs are providing services for. And this is just the average for Arizona. The average caseload is 55 For Pima County, it's 54, and so the caseload range is from 45 up to 70 in Pima County, and our national average is 50, and we currently have 1.2 vacancies. So we are in a really good position with speech and language pathologists. We consistently get new applicants in. Next up, we have our occupational therapists. So this really is the area that we are struggling the greatest. This is where our greatest vacancies are. This is where our highest need for our students is currently. And so we have 860 students total with occupational therapy services on their IEP. We have 291 students receiving direct services, 52 receiving indirect services. So 343 of our students are assigned to our current occupational therapist. The numbers below, the 364 for direct and the 153 are indirect services that are unassigned. And so unassigned means that we're waiting to hire staff or we're waiting to access a pool of contractors from a vendor. We currently have 5 OTs, occupational therapists, who work 5 days a week, and 2 of them who are working 4 days a week. So this leaves us with 6.4 vacancies that we direly need to fill. There is a nationwide shortage for occupational therapists, even looking at the medical setting. This is an area that we're not seeing a lot of movement. So this is certainly an area we want to pay attention to and make sure that we are adequately addressing. Next up is our physical therapists and the workloads that they are supporting. So we have 5 physical therapists. 3 of them work 5 days a week, 1 works 4 days, and then 1 works 2 days a week. And so the frequency and duration of our services, you'll be able to see kind of what our providers are providing services per month for our students. This slide is showing for our speech and language services. So this shows the 10 schools that have the most minutes per month for speech and language services. The column in the middle is the FTE, so 1.8 means we have 1 SLP who's working 5 days a week and another one who's working 4 days a week at Erickson. And then that shows, the column on the right is showing how many students total that have speech and language services. Again, these are our top 10 schools with the most minutes and the greatest need for speech services. Okay, next up we have our occupational therapy services by month. Again, these are the top 10 with the most minutes and the most number of students who are receiving services, starting with Myers-Ganong going down to Tolson. And then with our physical therapy services, again, this is just direct service minutes. We have White Elementary and Marshall that have 1 student who receives 90 minutes of direct services per month. We have 37 schools with 30 minutes per month on the IEPs, and then 17 schools that have 60 minutes a month as the max, and then 2 schools with 40 minutes, and then 2 schools with 20 minutes. Again, most of our physical therapy services are embedded, and the services are provided by the PE teacher or the self-contained ex-ed teacher. Okay, potential next steps. So what can we do to support? Again, we are in a pretty good condition with our speech and language support needs, so we can continue to examine the role of our leads for speech and language clinicians to look at like how we could maybe utilize that support and leverage in a more meaningful fashion. If we take a look at adding 1 to 2 positions, we would certainly reduce the workload and the caseloads. This would have a budget impact of $84,000 to $168,000. We can continue to look at our speech clinician assistant roles. This was something that we rolled out a year ago, and so we've been successful with having 2 individuals go on to get their speech and language pathologist credentials. So it is a way to begin a grow your own program. Again, I've noticed from doing this research that we really don't have a clearly defined process for the continuation or dismissal of services. And so this is a process that's underway. Like, how do we know when a student's met their goal and they're ready to transition out of services or continue to a higher level service or a lower level of service for speech? Next up with our occupational therapist. Again, this really is our greatest area of need. So we have a lead position. We advertise that position externally because we were not having luck hiring an internal person. So we really need to fill that role. If we're unable to fill that role, then my recommendation would be to assign 1 or 2 cadre positions to support. And so the budget impact of the cadre positions would be $2,000 to $4,000, which would be an added duty stipend that would be given to a current employee or two current employees. We want to continue to market and recruit. I've been working with HR to advertise at local universities. We've been advertising online at Indeed, LinkedIn. We've advertised at the ADE website. I've gotten feedback from our current occupational therapists, and so many of the occupational therapists aren't so responsive to their professional organizations for advertising. We want to make sure that we carefully examine how to recruit or possibly hire occupational therapy assistants. I was able to get some feedback as to why there was some hesitancy about hiring assistants. Our occupational therapists are concerned about jeopardizing their credentials by hiring an assistant who may not be performing at the level of expectancy. And so that is certainly something that we're continuing to work on. We have had a lot of success in that area. We are moving forward with looking at having contractors provide some occupational therapy assistants that we can interview in a week. And so we will move forward with that recommendation. Again, we want to make sure that we consider, like, how can we have a pipeline for occupational therapists? One option is to have students who can come and get clinical experience or potentially an internship in our district. We want to make sure that we're balancing our assignments for the preferences from our providers as well as our student needs. So we know that our students who have the highest level of need, sometimes there could be more fatigue with our clinicians. So we want to make sure we're having a balanced workload where we're looking at those needs, continuing to review the continuation, the consultation model, as well as the dismissal process for services, and then the consultation with case managers, because when indirect services are being provided, we have our case managers who are our ex-ed teachers, and how can we leverage that support for our teachers to work on some of the skills that our occupational therapists are working on. With our physical therapists, we want to continue that collaboration with our PE teachers and our case managers. We are really in a good position staffing-wise with our physical therapists. We did get a heads up that one of our PTs plans to retire at the end of the 25-26 school year. So we want to get a head start on advertising that position. Another consideration could be a cadre leader for our physical therapists, which would have a small impact of about $2,000 on the budget. If we wanted to add an additional physical therapist, the cost would be about $84,000 annually. And so this is here just to show some considerations when we were looking at the workload of our school psychologists. And so in order to have a weighted assignment based on the school, we looked at the overall campus enrollment. We looked at some data as to the percentage of students who might need access to that service. We also look at our self-contained programs, because we know our students in self-contained programs often have higher needs and need more services. And then we look at our preschool programs, because the early intervention and identification comes from our preschool programs often. So we want to make sure that there is that workload availability to adequately assess and provide services. And then again, our elementary schools have more initial evaluations, and therefore the workload at elementary schools is typically a little bit heavier. Next up for our continuous considerations is that recruitment and retention is big. We want to make sure we're spotlighting our hard to fill positions such as our occupational therapists. We're looking at additional data to analyze. Our current database is very limited in pulling reports and getting information. And so to come up with some of this data that's provided took a long time. And so we want to make sure that we're having a more efficient way to extract these reports and to analyze the data. We want to continue to have feedback with our related service providers in that collaboration. Knowing that our elementary schools have the higher caseloads and workloads, we want to be very strategic when we're making assignments to elementary schools. We want to continue to have discussions with health services. Health services is piloting SNAP with Medicaid reimbursement. That gives us an opportunity to find out their return on investment and really analyze if we want to continue to use our third-party vendor that we've been using, or if we want to convert our Medicaid requests to this system. We want to continue to have consultation on effective service delivery models. This is done by talking to our current therapists as well as talking to other school districts throughout our region. We want to continue with the synergy committee that we started. This committee is really analyzing our data entry and our process. We want to make sure we're reducing the amount of time that paperwork is taking. There's some AI features that are available through synergy, so we want to make sure we're thoroughly researching and vetting any of these options with our team members to make sure it is something that would protect our students and be beneficial for our students and our staff. We want to continue to have that integration between our data reporting and our Medicaid billing providers. And again, as mentioned earlier, we have what seems to be a reasonable workload amount is 10 to 12 students per day. And so just looking at that model for most of our other related service modalities. And then more time to provide an adequate assessment. And as Ms. Mesa mentioned, we need more time to really take a thorough look at what would be equitable and what would be our best next steps, and then to continue to expand that collaboration with our related service providers on their workload. We'll continue to have the ongoing TEA meetings and discussions as we've begun. Okay, thank you so much for your time and attention. That concludes my presentation.
Governing board members, any questions for Dr. Salmon? Ms. Shaw, then Dr. Shaw.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you go back to the slide that says occupational therapist monthly services and staffing?
This is the monthly services. You want?
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple questions and comments about this slide. We see these numbers, 343 students are assigned to an occupational therapist, and then that third data point says that 517 students are unassigned. You didn't add them up there, but it comes out to 517. So does that mean that 517 students are not receiving occupational therapy services?
That means they're not assigned because this data doesn't show the contractors that we had. Thank you for the governing board for approving that allocation. So we had 2.5, one part-time occupational therapist. So again, each occupational therapist sees around 50 to 60 students. And so that would be like another 100, 120 for the 2 full-time, plus about another 25 for the part-time. So if we did the math to add it up, those additional students would have been receiving services?
Would have. Well, I know that there's a major staffing issue. I believe it's 18 that are budgeted. We're 12 short, and we're supposed to have 6 for this upcoming school year. If that, because I know at our last meeting, one related service provider said that she had to leave the district. And so, you know, these numbers are pretty alarming. I think it's a major compliance and liability issue, and it, you know, puts, as I've been told by some staff members, it puts their licenses on the line when they have to sign off on IEP evaluations. Not only that, like our students are making slower progress. And so, yeah, there is a huge issue here, and I don't know if it is the salary or the caseloads, but I would like to see us, fill up these vacancies so that there are not as many students that are unassigned.
Dr. Shaw. Dr. Trio.
Just a point of clarification before the questions continue from the board. Dr. Salmon, are you saying, just for clarification, indirect unassigned, those are students assigned to outside of the district contracted vendors, correct or incorrect?
Right, I was saying that these numbers didn't take into account the 2.5 occupational therapists that we hired last year. This was just based on current staffing numbers without taking into account the contractors. The indirect services are services that are provided to staff members, and so those are not students. So the direct services are to students.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, President Ekstrom. Thank you, Dr. Solomon, for the presentation tonight, and to all those, and for Mr. Byrne on the Zoom, and those who worked on this presentation. And do we have any of our related service providers here in the audience? Oh. Okay. Well, if if you're listening online, thank you for all of your work and advocacy this year. My question specifically is to slide 9, so one slide back from this on the SLPs. Just where did all this data, all these data come from? Like where did you get our own numbers? Like did you just divide by 76 or where did our numbers come from? And where did you get all the other data points here in terms of the average in Arizona and Pima County?
Awesome, great question, thank you. And so because we have a lead for speech and language pathologist, she was able to assist with our synergy engineer and myself to go through the numbers. And so these are accurate numbers. We had an opportunity to analyze the speech and language pathologist caseloads and workload numbers. And then there is a community of practice. There's a group of SLPs that were connected through Pima County Superintendent Office. There's a group of 5 or 6 of them. And so they got together and they did a survey of Pima County. And so that's how they got the Pima County caseload ranges. And then ADE has the number that gives us the average for Arizona.
So that came from ADE directly?
For the average for Arizona, right? And then we used the national data that was available through the Speech and Language Pathologists National Association for the national average.
And on slide 13, continuing the SLP caseloads, SLP services by school per month, yeah, that's one. So is this, about the 92 students at Erickson, for example, are these all the students receiving any kind of services? Like they need to have like a quick eval and you don't qualify for services, your speech is fine. That's 92, or is only 92 students the ones getting regular speech therapy services?
These are the students who are identified to need speech services,
Okay.
so all 92 have qualified for services.
So this doesn't include all the evals and everything that are done. So probably more students at Erickson had some kind of evaluation at some point as they're determining what their IEP should be?
Correct. And so if the student was evaluated and qualified as needing speech services, that's the 92.
But a lot of students are evaluated but not requiring or are not qualifying for it. Do we know how many students get evaluations? I think it's part of the caseload issues that have been brought up by our SLP members is, not just the ongoing services, but all of the times that they're evaluating students that don't qualify for services, all the times that they're involved in the IEP process, regardless of what their final determination is, whether they need SLP, OT, or PT services. Do we have that data at all in terms of how many total students are evaluated?
I certainly can get that data. We do have it available.
I think that'll fit a little better, as well. So I know I see that the numbers, fit in that 50 to 40 to 50 or whatever, 50 to 60 range and everything based on these. But what we're hearing from the folks are not just as ongoing services, but all the evals and times that they're involved with the IEP process.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have some questions. How many RSPs were given the opportunity to have input on this presentation?
How many? I want to say there were like 4 or 5, but
So we had a larger group of the subcommittee that met, and then we set the date for the next meeting, and there were about 4 or 5. But Jim Byrne and Dan Ireland were also, and Gina Santos were also provided the PowerPoint that the subcommittee worked on. So it was this, so we have the joint TEA TUSD XED committee. There's a subcommittee of that, so it's a smaller group.
So were those people able to make recommendations on what information was given here?
Absolutely. So what it was is we know information was provided to the board. So this is a combination of information provided, data that Dr. Salmon had, and everyone provided input into this. And Mr. Byrne is also on the Zoom, and he can speak to it as well, but everyone involved.
Okay. And how long does it take a student to receive the services that they need once they're evaluated?
right. So once the student is evaluated to get the services, they need an IEP. So oftentimes there's an evaluation and then there's a meeting to give the results of the evaluation. Sometimes during that same meeting, there's the IEP development. By law, we have up to 30 days after the evaluation results are available to propose an IEP. And so once the IEP is provided, then the parent decides if they want to have access to the services or not.
And how long does it take to schedule an IEP?
So we do IEPs annually. The initial IEP is done within 30 days of the evaluation or the qualification for services.
So then it would be about 60 days then?
Right, an evaluation process can take up to 60 days, and then the IEP could take up to 30. So for an initial, up to 90 days, typically it's not quite that long for the
Okay.
IEP.
And how much time does a student spend with their RSPs
Right.
on average?
So on average, a student would spend about 60 minutes a month. It's all individualized, so it really depends on the level of need of a student and the amount of services they have. So about 60 minutes a month is kind of average.
So that's not very long, right?
No, not very long.
Okay. Any other questions, governing board members? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just kind of confused here because some slides, specifically I think the one after this, OT services by school per month, and I could be wrong with my addition, but it adds up to like 219, and the number that we have on the previous slide of students who are receiving occupational therapy services is 343 who are assigned.
Right, and this slide is just showing the 10 sites that have the most services. It's
I
not
see.
exhaustive of all of our sites that have some
Okay,
services.
thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
But going back to the unassigned students, who number 517, like, so you're saying that the 2.5 OTs that are contracted are having a caseload of 206 students?
No, I'm not saying that. Again, one full-time OT would have 50 to 60 students, so that's 120 for the full-time, and then half of that, maybe 30 for a part-time. So that would be the extent of the contractors. So again, we really have to recruit and hire some individuals directly. I've been working with a group of OTs who are willing to supervise OT assistants, and so we do have an opportunity to do some interviews and possibly hire some OT assistants who could provide some of the therapy. And again, an OT assistant would be providing therapy to about 50 students.
Okay, and the workload management system that we'll be working on, does that, I guess, encompass sort of the paperwork involved, or is it like all of the above?
Yes, it would include the actual direct services as well as the paperwork that would be involved.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Romero?
So looking at potential next steps, other than creating a CTE program for SLP, OT, and PTs, from the people that are in these positions, where are they leaning for this? We'll just go like for OT. Are they leaning for OT student support options? Are they looking to recruit occupational therapies? Is there a priority list on these next options for each of these categories?
Absolutely. So with our OT group, we all are on the same page about the dire need, because in order to retain, we have to work on reducing the workload. Recruitment, like if individuals know the workload's going to be so heavy, that's making it very difficult for recruitment purposes. So we really have to come up with a solution that is going to be able to disperse the workload. We've been working with the universities to find out more about what OTs are wanting, even reaching out to contract vendors to find out, okay, like what do you all do to recruit and to retain occupational therapists? And so many of them have kind of a pool of therapists who travel. And so some of them don't really want to be like in Arizona for 3 years. They want to come work here a year and then they want to travel and go somewhere else. And so that's a model that we are looking at. Again, those OT assistants is a way that we can capitalize on. We haven't had OT assistants in our district for over 20 years. And so that's a model that we want to make sure that we are getting the best qualified candidates. And then we're having a system that's organized to help everybody be successful, because that certainly is a way to disperse the workload. So again, working collaboratively with universities, working with our current occupational therapists, looking at occupational therapy assistant models. Those are the priorities for our current occupational therapist.
Well, I am encouraged that we're looking at these potential next steps, because I'm sure every one of us on the board has had an opportunity to speak to some of these individuals in these positions on a one-to-one or in a group type of settings. And their position is very It is definitely a difficult one. I know I would never want to, this would not be anything that I would even want to be involved with because of, I know my capabilities. I appreciate the district going out, finding that, you know, what's important to them. I think all of us up here want to make sure that we can support our students that require these positions, and anything we can do to work collaboratively with them, especially like OT, if we have a gap of how many positions that we need, look at a priority list of where we need to go, and like I said, gauge it as we move along. But I am encouraged that part of your presentation was potential next steps, and I hope we get there.
Awesome, thank you.
Ms. Shaw?
I just wanted to follow up on Ms. Ekstrom's inquiry about the staff who were politicking about this issue. I know I spoke with several women who are related service providers. I know other board members have as well, who were really hoping to be able to present on this issue, and I'm really surprised that they're not here. So I just want to ask Mr. Byrne if you could speak to that. Were these staff persuaded to not come out here and represent themselves?
No, it's a fair question, given their proclivity for turning out and supporting themselves, their colleagues, and their students. I know one is out of town on summer vacation, and I think you know, it's tough once summer hits to be able to attend these things. But no, I know the reception to the conversations that we've had with employee relations and Dr. Salmon on this were highly supported by that group, and I think there was an acknowledgement of what data needs to be gathered and sort of the methods to do that. And so, you know, with things on track in terms of looking at that, you know, the term workload management, and really kind of really boiling things down to, you know, kind of referencing what Mr. Romero talked about in terms of what the priorities are, how do we get to these. And so weighing the services and going job family specific to each kind of service provider, and what those hours look like, what does the paperwork look like. So I think it's finally we all arrived on the same track and same path forward for this school year to be able to have the methodology to find the data that supports those maybe longer term next steps in terms of what a sustainable and equitable service model looks like, not only for the staff but the students as well.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Well, I know this is an ongoing conversation, and you know, I do want to give those related service providers room to come back to the board as we move toward a resolution for this, especially after school starts, so that we can hear about like how's it's going once the school year begins. Thank you.
And I just have one more comment. I know that they spoke a lot about burnout and things like that. So will your office be having more opportunity for them to come, like office hours, in the next school year?
Absolutely, we are going to maintain our current schedule of office hours and then increase some as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Natalie, yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Luna Rose.
Okay, it's okay, thanks. Hi, Dr. Salmon. Thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question, because I'm hearing you talk about collaboration and hearing my colleagues. I know this is traditionally like not easy positions to fill, and it's kind of a niche within education. So I want to thank you and your staff for all the work, and on all the staff that came and met with us at different times individually. But my question is concerning, when you're talking about collaboration, and I see this bullet point, collaboration with other school districts, what does that look like?
Yeah, so an example of that was with our speech and language pathologist data. And so like some of our districts have leads for the various positions or they have groups. So just finding out like what's going on, like what are their numbers, what are their workload numbers, how are they addressing that? And so then like for example with our school psychologists, we're able to get a consortium, and so that's working with the university, is working with other districts to get more interns into TUSD, and so just exploring models such as that.
Okay, and that has not been done previous?
No.
No, okay. Well, I'd be curious to see what the other districts, so at some point, if you could come back and let the board know what that looks like, I would like that information.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Ms. Luna Rose. Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Salmon. Thank you, Ms. Mesa. And Mr. Byrne, thank you. Next, we'll go on to consent agenda. Items 5.3 to 5.18, Dr. Trujillo.
From board members, we would like to present the consent agenda for governing board consideration as arranged, 5.2 to 5.18.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Ms. Shaw.
I'd like to pull item 5.14 and vote on it separately.
Mr. Romero.
Discussion on 5.12.
5.12. Do you want me to pull it? Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve items 5.2 through 5.11, 5.13, and then 5.15 through 5.18?
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made by Dr. Shaw and seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Item 5.12, Mr. Romero.
So I have a question on this one regarding to our janitorial services, and I know we got a late update, so that was my concern, so thank you very much for looking at that. I would just like to look at that one division before passing all of them together to see if there is room for saving the district money on that. I don't know if Ricky wants to.
Yeah, I just sent you an email to address that. So in regard specifically to the janitorial services piece, we will, it's the very first, we will restart that process to reevaluate it. We will expand the group of individuals who are going to evaluate. Because Hilliard and Waxy specifically are part of a cooperative, we don't go through the extended request for proposals process because 1GPA does that. We do evaluate and we do review to make sure that they've complied, that 1GPA specifically has complied with all the state procurement rules. But because there were concerns and questions that were brought up after the fact, we will take that one specifically, reevaluate it, and come back to the board with it.
And then, yeah, if we do that, then I'm happy to vote on that today. Pull that one item.
So pull the janitorial supplies?
Yeah, the Hilliard Waxy janitorial, we're asking to pull that one. We'll take care of that one individually, but all the other ones, unless there are other questions.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
So a motion has been made to pull Hilliard and Waxy, but to approve all others. The motion was made by Mr. Romero, seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 5.14. Do you have any discussion? Or just want to vote on it separately?
Just want to vote on it separately.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve this?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion has been made by Ms. Luna Rose and seconded by Dr. Shaw. All those in favor say, or Mr. Romero?
Yes, I just have one thing, and I know this is a very touchy subject as far as this goes, and stuff that we can't discuss. But I know for me, for a business move, I know there's one way that I want to vote, but my business persona moves me a different direction. So, thank you.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1. And with the passage of consent agenda, I would like to congratulate Assistant Principal Sergio Ortiz from Dodge and interim assistant principal for Lineweaver Brooks Lawson. Congratulations. If you'd like to come up and say a few words, the floor is yours.
Don't be shy.
Anyone?
Hello, welcome. Hello, board, and Dr. Trujillo. I didn't prepare anything, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for an opportunity of a lifetime. This is definitely a dream of mine, and it's wonderful to be here in Tucson and just to join a wonderful team and a wonderful school district, and I just can't wait for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Good evening, Superintendent Trujillo and members of the board. I just want to thank you for the honor of appointing me as the Assistant Principal of Lineweaver Elementary. I'm truly grateful for your trust and support to work with our students. I look forward to working closely with our community to serve our students, staff, and families as we grow together and continuing creating an environment where every child feels safe, knows their value, and is inspired to reach their full potential. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could both wait, we're going to take a picture, but after these next two items. So item 6.1 is the appointment of interim principal, Tucson High Magnet School, Dr. Trujillo.
As President Extra, members of the governing board, we are very, very blessed to have an amazing high school principal in our midst, works in senior director for grants and federal programs. Before he came for us, he had a wonderful 9-year run as a principal of Amphi High School, transforming that school from a D to a B, and one of the highest performing high schools there in Amphi during his time. And I want to thank him for his consideration of taking on, though a challenging but a very rewarding assignment out there at Tucson High. As mentioned before, tonight's candidate currently serves as Senior Director for Grants and Federal Programs. And tonight, Mr. John Lanza is our recommendation to fill the interim principal position at Tucson High for the 25-26 school year.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Well, I've said this before, but I want to say it again. Mr. Alonso was my science teacher freshman year at Amphi High School. We were a rough class, and he put up with us, and I appreciate you, Mr. Alonso. I really don't remember many of my teachers, but I did remember you, and I appreciate you, and I look forward to what you will do at Tucson High.
Do you want to move the item?
And I'll move the item.
I will second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Shaw and seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Lanza.
Well, I'm glad I survived that freshman science class. Thank you. Board President Ekstrom, Board Clerk Shaw, Governing Board members, Superintendent Trujillo, Legal Counsel Ross. Deeply honored and humbled to accept the role of principal at a school so highly regarded as Tucson High School. Know that I step into this role with a deep sense of responsibility and commitment. I bring with me not only experience and vision, but also a strong belief in the power of public education, our community, and our district. To the students of Tucson High School who are hopefully listening, you are the heart of our school. Every decision we make, every goal we set, and every moment that we spend at school would be centered around you. I want you to know that I believe in your ability, not just to achieve academically, but to grow into leaders that our city, state, and nation need. Your voice matters, your future matters, and I'm here to support you every step of the way. To our teachers and staff, you are the foundation of our school. Your dedication, passion, and excellence is what motivates me. I have a deep belief in the expertise and skill, your expertise and skill, and I look forward to building a collaborative environment where we all grow together. I will be a principal who listens, who learns, and who builds with each one of you. And finally, to our families, thank you for the trust you place in us to teach and work with your children every day. Education is a partnership, and I am committed to building strong, open, and respectful relationships with you. Your insight and involvement are essential to the success of your students and our school. I welcome your presence and your voice in everything that we do. And in closing, I want to thank you again, Governing Board, for this incredible opportunity. I'm ready and excited to lead Tucson High School and add to its long tradition of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is item 6.2, interim principal at Cragen Elementary School. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, tonight's recommendation, one of our emerging leaders in the district's done an outstanding job in her time at University High School. The former Spanish language educator got her start in South Point, where she taught Spanish and then became its department chair for world languages, as well as an instructional coach, before joining University High School as an assistant principal for the 21-22 school year, where she's been for the last 4 years and has really contributed to an amazing campus culture and climate there at UHS. So tonight, Jeanette Apáez Gutierrez is our recommendation for the interim principal role at Cragen Elementary.
I will motion to approve Jeanette Apáez Gutierrez as the interim principal at Cragen Elementary School.
Second.
A motion has been made by myself and seconded by by Mr. Romero. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Congratulations. If you'd like to come up and say a few words.
Good evening, President Ekstrom, Governing Board members, Dr. Trujillo, TUSD community. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the trust to serve the Cragen community in this capacity. I am honored. I'm excited, as you can tell in my voice. To the UHS community, I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude. Your support, collaboration, and shared commitment has helped me grow, not only as an administrator, but as a person, so I am grateful for that. And to the Cragen community, I'm excited to work with you, to learn with you, and to achieve great things. So thank you again.
Thank you. So if we could have the two assistant principals and then the two new principals come up for a photo with the governing board.
What year did you graduate? I'm sure they still have it if they're just. Right. Can't imagine.
And I do it, right?
Okay. I know, I have to use the restroom too.
I need to go to the restroom.
Okay.
Val said we could start with that. Okay. Okay, we'd like to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is public hearing for fiscal year 2026 desegregation proposed budget. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, so protocol-wise, we do, and this might be a question for Rob, we do the presentation first before opening up the public hearing?
That is typically how we do budget.
Okay.
Public hearing.
So with that, we will turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ricky Hernandez, to walk us through the proposed desegregation budget for fiscal year 2026, of course, to be immediately followed by the hearing, public hearing.
Good evening, board members. So this is the proposed desegregation budget for next fiscal year for the school district. Just to reiterate some of the elements in the board agenda item that I didn't bring up here. This PIA was posted on May 29th. It was also posted on Facebook on the same day and on our homepage under the public notice section on May 29th. So we've definitely made this public for comment, and we'll keep it there for the remainder of the period until we adopt next month. So just, as an overview for you and for the kind of the community. So statute authorizes the use of desegregation funding to implement activities of a court order or an OCR agreement. Obviously, we've had both of these. Now that we are no longer under court supervision, the dollars that we have in place can only be used to implement activities that were in place before the court order or the court supervision ended. By law, the funding is frozen at the fiscal year 2009 level, which is $63,711,047. So we can never exceed that unless the statute is amended by the legislature. Any unused portions, if for whatever reason we do have carry forward at the end of the year, that cannot move forward. So you can't add carry forward to 63 million. It is always 63 million. And it is not subject to any inflationary increases. So whenever the legislature appropriates inflation to our base support level, it does not include DSEG. So again, always the $63.7 million number by law. So just as an overview for where we are now through June 30th of the current fiscal year, we are expected to spend just over $68.5 million in DSEG. That will exceed the authority under statute by $4.8 million. So we will need to reallocate that DSEG of $4.8 million, give or take once we finish closing out the fiscal year, to the non-DSEG portion of MNO. So whatever amount of money we are above the 63.7 million, the non-DSEG portion of MNO will need to absorb. The largest spending increase is obviously in staff. About 90% of the spending we do across the entire district is people. There was an 11% increase from fiscal year 24 to 25 on staffing. So we went from just over 54.6 million to just over 60.8 million in the cost of salaries and benefits across all desegregation funded departments and activities. So going into fiscal year 26, just to describe the process that we undertook. So because the deficit in desegregation has grown to 7.5% of the total DSEG, we can no longer address this through turnover and attrition. So initially, when the turnover and attrition strategy was used and agreed upon by the former plaintiffs, the amount of money that we were over was less than $1 million. That has ballooned as the cost of staff has increased. So for this upcoming fiscal year, financial services implemented what's called a zero-based budgeting approach. I presented that to all of you back in November, where every DSEG-funded department had to justify every expense in their budget. So they developed 3 budgets, an essential, a current, and enhanced level budget, so that we could see essentially what's the minimum and what would, something that looked really great would look like to essentially have as much information as possible. But the goal was still to reduce up to 10% of their spending compared to fiscal year 25. All of these budgets were submitted by mid-February. And over the course of the last several months, departments have provided presentations to all of you at board meetings with with 2 goals. One, to obviously provide you an overview of the work that's being done in the department, but also what are the proposed budget changes that each department was making as part of their budget proposal going into fiscal year 26. Now, departments submitted budgets all told. On average, the reductions came to less than 3%. So they did not achieve the 10% that was requested, which is about 1.6 million. We sat down in finance, we reviewed budgets against historical spending levels and position budgeting. In a lot of instances, we had departments who under budgeted positions. They weren't even covering salaries for the people they did want to keep. So we had to provide them more money. In some instances, there were dollars where they had more money than they needed for some positions. And in some instances, we were looking at their historical spending and we were noticing that they were carrying a lot of dollars that were not going to be used. So we identified an additional $1.3 million in reductions across departments. That listing is part of the board agenda item in the PIA that was provided. Another element another strategy that we're taking for fiscal year 26 is right now every teacher receives a supplemental base pay of $9,600. That is generally paid for by the Classroom Site Fund unless you're a teacher who is funded by desegregation, Title I, IDEA, or anything else that is not M&O. So in DSEG, every single teacher, let's say in the English that teaches ELD or two-way dual language, their supplemental base is paid by DSEG. So in order for us to help offset some of these expenses, we are moving 50% of the supplemental base pay out of DSEG for these teachers and into the Classroom Site Fund for the next fiscal year only. So that cost will be taken up by Classroom Site Fund. We are not recommending reductions in culturally relevant pedagogy and instruction, in the multicultural curriculum department, and in the student relations departments. Those three departments will not have reductions to their next fiscal year budget. They will only receive increases or receive flat funding depending on what their budget is for their needs to operate. Those will be paid for by moving positions from the Fine Arts Department out of DSEG and into Classroom Site Fund. 5 certified arts integration specialists will be funded by Classroom Site Fund for next fiscal year. So what does it look like when you kind of start breaking it down? These are the departments with changes over $100,000. You can see that transportation, so the activities are transportation, professional learning community trainings, dropout prevention, English language development, and dual language expansion all have increases due to increased cost of staff. EBAS, which is in technology services, advanced learning, magnet, the new teacher induction, and translation interpretation all have decreases for a variety of reasons that I've presented here. All told, these departments are contributing at least $100,000 in reductions or receiving increases over $100,000 for next fiscal year. When you take a look at function types, so the different types of activities that we're investing in, so there are increases in instruction in school, some minor increases in school administration, and a significant increase in transportation. Transportation has been the one department that has had the largest increases in costs, just because of the salary increases that we provided over the years. And so playing catch up to those as well as the benefits costs. But we are decreasing in other areas of student support, teacher support, operations and facilities, and central services. The biggest increases of expense types are salaries and benefits. It's people. That's where the majority of the funding is going to, while we are decreasing essentially non-staff / operating expenses. So we are looking at over almost $3 million in increases in the cost of staff for next fiscal year in DSEG. Top 10 departments, you can see that basically it's all the same departments. So language acquisition, still at the top of the heap, going from $13.7 million to $14.1 million, and you can go down from there. All of these departments have essentially maintained their level of funding for next fiscal year. I will clarify 2 departments, regionals and financial services. So regionals, those are 7th period day teachers. So for professional learning communities, we allocate teachers for 7th period, but we put those positions in the regional departments because we don't want schools to be able to reallocate those for anything else. Obviously there are costs related to those teachers, but those are teaching positions that live in the regional departments. These are not central positions. Financial services, this is where we allocated all of the interventionist positions. Reading interventionists, math interventionists, response to intervention positions. We put those all in financial services. Again, they're allocated to the schools. We don't want the schools to essentially have access to moving those FTEs. So in order to safeguard them, we allocated them into financial services only for the use of schools. And you can see the breakdowns in the budget that you're being provided with the board agenda item. Classroom spending estimate. This is something that I know people tend to like to see is, where are we focusing our dollars in DSEG? We continue to spend the majority of our money in DSEG in instruction in the classroom. In fact, we're going from 53 to 56% is being budgeted for direct instruction to students. Instruction, student support, and teacher support, professional development continue to be the 3 top level investments of desegregation for next fiscal year. So next steps is we will continue to have this available and open on our website. And individuals will be able to provide public feedback that we will collect for the next 30 days. This will be incorporated as part of the public hearing and adoption of the entire district budget on July 15th. That is the date that is set in order to do the district's whole budget adoption, which includes desegregation. Any questions?
Governing board members, any questions? Ms. Shaw?
Sorry, I did not have a question.
Oh, no questions? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing then. Thank you. Public participation. Members of the public may speak during the proposed desegregation 910G budget for the 25-26 school year public hearing portion of the agenda. The board president shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and for maintaining proper order by setting such limitations as may be appropriate. The speakers during the public hearing should restrict their remarks to the topics related to the proposed desegregation 910G budget for the 25-26 school year. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum of 3 minutes. Individuals speaking before the board shall observe rules of propriety and good conduct and refrain from impertinent and slanderous remarks. Contents of this card are public information. Our first speaker is Lillian Fox.
My name's Lillian Fox, board president, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo, Mr. Ross, and Yolanda. I gave you this thing. One of the things, this is the prior policy for setting the board agenda. One of the problems you have is this thing was changed, so you have no voice in what's in the agenda. That guy right there chooses what's on the agenda. Several times I have seen 3 of you say, oh, we need thus and so on the agenda. Never got on the agenda. I saw another situation where 4 of you were really adamant you need something on the agenda. Never happened. All these places where I have yellow is where board president was taken off. It used to be board president and the superintendent set the agenda. In the past, there have been committees that did it, but it is unique right now, or I think it's unique, that the board has no voice on what appears in the agenda. That's particularly relevant to the DSEG budget, because when Sky Sachko spoke last time, a number of you said you wanted to see the numbers on Avid's effectiveness. Never happened. Never put on your agenda. She's never had to respond. In the DSEG orders, every program that money was spent on for DSEG was supposed to be tested, and you were supposed to track the results to show that there was actually something happening with it, that it actually was effective. You were not supposed to fund stuff and then never look at it to see if it worked. That's what was done with Evid. Never had been tracked, and she was never put on the agenda. The other thing that's kind of weird, you have had so many meetings on the DSEG budget, like multiple meetings, and the DSEG budget's less than 10% of the total budget. How many meetings have you had on the total budget? I don't think you've had any, have you? The other thing I would say, there's all this attention to cutting DSEG, what DSEG money's being spent on, because there's not enough money to cover all the DSEG stuff. If a DSEG program is good, why wouldn't you use your regular money to fund it? Instead of cutting it, fund it. If it's not good, don't even use DSEG for it. The other thing I would say, you should have a mailing list. The parent who complained, why should she have to keep checking to see what's going on? Most organizations have mailing lists. You can sign up for what you want to hear from them, whether it's a newsletter or whether it's the agenda or what it is. Then you would have people turning out and you'd be informing the public if you had a mailing list. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Sylvia Campoy.
Since the federal court supervision was lifted, it's become your total responsibility to ensure that the desegregation budget is aligned with the USP prior to gaining unitary status, as well as with a stipulation within the post-unitary status plan, which includes the program impact analysis. The board's responsibility in this is correlated to the nearly $64 million you receive every year for desegregation, over $2 billion over the course of the case. The board must guard against placing the desegregation funding in jeopardy and refrain from using it to placate the administration or gain political favor with TEA or any other entity. First, of great importance, the requirements to perform the performance impact analysis has not been conducted systemically on the budget that you have in front of you. What has been witnessed with the 24-25 and 25-26 budget is nothing short of a shell game. It's a Ponzi game, and as always, it impacts disenfranchised kids first and foremost. And that's what you cannot see because you have no analysis. What you have in front of you is a lot of talk about money and not kids. You're here from the kids. You're here for the kids. One has to follow the quick hand of the budget maker to understand that last year's proposed budget for desegregation funded aggressively promoted absorbing numerous ESSER intervention teachers, and it marked the start of unraveling the unitary status plan. You thought you were doing a good thing. You started the destruction of the unitary status plan. By inappropriately absorbing the salaries and the benefits of ESSER teachers in the budget cuts started, and now they have continued because it's going to be a domino effect. If your budget maker knew that salaries were the biggest part of the DSEG budget, why did you allow your budget maker to put more salaries into the DSEG budget and get us to the point now where more cuts are going on, and in areas that you have no idea how it is impacting Black and brown kids? It's unconscionable. What Lillian Fox just said is what's going on. The board is not in charge. Take charge.
Thank you. So that concludes our public hearing. Next is item 8.1, approval of proposed annual expenditure budget for the 25-26 fiscal year for Tucson Unified School District.
Yes, I'd like to welcome back Mr. Hernandez to walk us through the maintenance and operations budget side of the house and its proposed fiscal year 26 budget, and of course an overview of some of the cost reductions that we've made. Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah. Good evening again, board members. Just waiting for that. Yeah. So while that's getting up, this is part, obviously, of the required approval of the proposed budget, which sets the budget limits for fiscal year 26 for the entire school district, particularly in the maintenance and operations and unrestricted capital budgets. So I will go through this. So just a quick update on the state budget itself. So as of June 3rd, when I finished putting together this presentation, the legislature had still not completed its work and has not adopted a state budget for school districts for next fiscal year. Obviously, unlike our city, county, community college counterparts, we're more dependent on state funding than they are, and unless there is a budget from the state, we are working on estimates. So The Auditor General issued preliminary budget forms on May 29th as required by law so that it provided school districts the ability to approve a proposed budget by the statutory deadline of July 5th. I won't read the statement. The statement in italics there is the statement from the Auditor General in regards to what's included. One of the things that's most important here is because the budget session has not concluded, or the legislative session has not concluded, and a budget is not adopted, all of the budget limits that we are using today are based on fiscal year 25 and not fiscal year 26. So I will go through those, but as of right now, we are 20 days and counting until shutdown. So just as a just as an overview, will ask for your approval on the proposed budget today. Adoption and public hearing will take place on the 15th. Hopefully by that point we will have a state budget. We will need to return to you on or before September the 15th to revise the budget and include any enacted legislation at that point. Obviously then at that point we will go through our normal process of AFR and approval on the 15th of October, a December revision, and a May revision for the remainder of the fiscal year. So what are the factors that are in and not in? So what's not included in this budget due to lack of a state budget is, one, the 2% inflationary increase to the base support level. So the Joint Legislative Budget Committee notified school districts that we should be expecting a 2% inflationary increase. It's about $100 per weighted ADM. For us, it's about $5.3 million. That is money that is currently not budgeted for next fiscal year due to not having a state budget. The Proposition 123 supplemental funding. So Proposition 123 will expire in 20 days. Over the course of the last 10 years, we and other school districts have been receiving supplemental funding. In our case, we receive about $2.7 million that is added to M&O. Our understanding is that that funding should continue into fiscal year 26, but that is currently not part of legislation because Proposition 123 will expire on June 30th. Now, what is included in the calculations that are before you is we do have a decrease in our teacher experience index. Just as a what that is, teacher experience index takes a look at the total experience of all our teachers on average, compares that to the average experience of the teachers across the state of Arizona. If our teachers are more experienced than the average on the state, we get a little bit more bump. Even though our teachers on the whole are more experienced than the statewide average, it did decline a little bit from school year 25 to school year 26. So that is a loss of about $153,000. As part of the budgeting process, we are accounting for a 1.5% decrease to our average daily membership. That's about another $2.5 million in funding loss from fiscal year 25. If you recall, our 100th day decrease was about 1.3%. So 1.5% is definitely still tracking. If that doesn't come to bear out on the 100th day, I will come back to you with good news. But right now we are conservatively estimating a 1.5% decrease. It also eliminates the one-time funding of $3 million. So if you recall, we received a $2 million payment for free and reduced price lunch students and a $1 million payment for capital funding. Those, as they say, they were one-time dollars that were provided in lieu of an inflationary increase that we were supposed to be receiving due to state budget deficits on the part of the legislature. So we will now see a return of that $3 million come next fiscal year. So what does it look like? This is a lot of information. As I've shown you, there is a proposed loss of funding at the bottom of this table. It accounts for a loss of 1.5% in average daily membership. The carry forward will decrease. We're estimating a carry forward of about $19 million. Originally, we had a projected carry forward of over $22 million. That has to do with the fact that we will be absorbing the excess or the deficit in the desegregation budget. So we will be taking that on through carry forward, hence the $3 million decrease. But we are spending $13.4 million of our budget balance carry forward from one year to the next. Overall, our capital funding remains relatively the same. DSEG capital has shrunk because M&O DSEG has increased. So those two numbers offset each other. DSEG M&O has a $1.1 million increase. DSEG Capital has a $1.1 million decrease. Always $63.7 million. Carry forward will decrease by $1.3 million. We are losing our one-time funds, and we are not earning as much interest as we earned in the past. All told, our M&O budget limit will decrease by over $19 million going into fiscal year 26 based on these limits today. Once we receive the updated limits from the legislature, we will be able to come back and revise this, but looking at what we have today, this is a loss of nearly $19.5 million in funding in M&O and a loss of nearly $4 million in the unrestricted capital fund. Again, once the legislature completes their budgeting process, we will reflect those changes and hopefully these numbers will look slightly more positive. Looking at DSEG, you just saw, I just provided you with the detail on DSEG. This is a summary of looking at the proposed budget to the May revision that you approved last month and what it looks like across the various USP categories, what's changing, what's not. This is just overall kind of where the dollars are moving to. Ultimately, it's always $63.7 million. We are putting more money into transportation, into staff, into quality of education. All of the other categories are essentially taking that hit and decreasing for a variety of reasons. All of those reasons are laid out in the USP budget detail and in the PIA so that you can see why those categories have moved. All told, the district's total operating budget is estimated at over $737 million, a decrease of $21 million to the current fiscal year. Our most significant decreases are obviously M&O and capital, but we are also losing funding in federal and state projects. There are grants that are either not being renewed or we are receiving less funding for those. Title I is our biggest one. We are losing some dollars in Title I. There are federal projects that are not coming back. As carry forward, though, comes into part of that picture, we will add to that so that federal project number may climb. But right now, we know that our actual allocations going into fiscal year 26 are less than the allocations we have for fiscal year 25. And our internal service funds, that is a significant, well, that's about a $3 million decrease in cash that's being used by our funds. Mostly our employee benefits trust using a little bit more cash in order to cover some of the increase in benefits. But overall, we're staying relatively consistent across all of our funding. So $737 million to operate the district next year. Taxes. So part of this obviously includes estimating property taxes for next fiscal year. Overall, our tax situation will be neutral. The tax rate for next fiscal year, all told between primary and secondary, will be just over $5.62, a 13-cent decrease. So homeowners on a $200,000 home will see a decrease of approximately $9.31 across the district. The neutral rate really has to do with the fact that we had a 3.3% increase in the assessed valuation of the district. So all told, the value of the district went from almost $4.3 billion to $4.4 billion across the entire district. But overall, we're keeping a neutral tax rate. So next steps, if you approve today using the estimated budget limits, we will return on July 15th to conduct a public hearing for your consideration to adopt the budget. Also to conduct a truth in taxation hearing on adjacent ways. We are asking for $2 million in tax levy for adjacent ways to conduct a variety of projects around our schools, a lot of sidewalks, some parking lots, egress and ingress, some flood control projects. $2 million is what we're looking for. Once the new forms are updated and issued by the legislature or by the Auditor General, we will return to you to hopefully revise that budget by September 15th. And then by November 30th, we hope to have the official FY26 budget book, which incorporates not only the fund balances that are part of the annual financial report in October, but the revised budget limits that the legislature approves. Doing a budget book today is based on essentially incomplete information. We want to provide you a budget book that has the entire budget based on what the legislature approves. With that, I will take any questions.
Governing board members, any questions? Mr. Romero?
Ricky, real quick, on the 2 million for, you mentioned the egress,
Adjacent ways?
Yes, yes. Can you give me a little more information on that?
So we're allowed to levy a certain amount of dollars out of adjacent ways. Here's the tricky part. Anytime we're levying, doesn't matter whether it's going up or down, we're required to do a truth in taxation hearing. Adjacent ways can only be used for essentially conducting projects that do safe ingress and egress to a school facility. Can't be to a district building, it can only be to a school. We can do flood control projects, we can do some sidewalks, we can do some parking lot as part of like a flood control project, for example, but we can't do like wholesale repavings, or we can't use it for whole kind of capital projects. All of those projects have to be approved by the school facilities division before we spend the dollars. But in order for us to spend the dollars, we obviously have to levy first. So we're asking for essentially a 5-cent tax rate in order to levy to collect $2 million to move forward with these projects next school year.
So would this also include like some areas like around schools where there's crossing areas where there is no crosswalk for them? Or say, like some of our schools, they have parents lined up on both sides of the road, so traffic coming down from the neighborhoods almost have like one lane in there because we don't have a parent pull-out and parking area.
It can include pullouts. It can include, kind of resetting the ramps, the sidewalks in order for them to make them ADA compliant. We can do some of those projects. We can't do all of them though. So some of it can be for some of the bus bay pieces, for example. So yeah, there are some of those projects that can be done. We will have a listing of those projects for you for the adoption. Facilities will provide me with a listing of what projects they're looking to construct next year.
And thanks for knowing what my next question was going to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you for your presentation. The last slide on there says that the board will be getting the fiscal year 26 budget book in November. Will that budget book be the old school budget book that we're used to with the Excel sheets, or like the new one that you incorporated last year?
We will do both.
You'll do both.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do the new version and we'll do the old Excel version.
Okay, and I know, we're waiting on some things from the state, but besides that, is there, can't we receive that budget book ahead of November?
I can provide you for the adoption. I can provide you based on the dollars that are currently in there. They will change. So I know the criticism has been that the numbers change. And so we didn't want to issue multiple versions of this book. But if the board would like to have kind of a preliminary draft book, we can certainly put one together. The old version, the new version would be the one with the legislative approvals, because the fund balances, there are other elements that we have to wait for the annual financial report to complete. But if you'd like the Excel version, we can provide it. It's just those budget limits are going to change once the legislature approves the budget.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, and if you could perhaps place those numbers that will be fluctuating in a different color, so that the board and the public can just identify easier items that will be changing.
Okay. We can make a footnote on that.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Oh,
yeah.
We do need some motion.
Please.
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made by Ms. Luna Rose and seconded by Dr. Shaw. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 8.2 is Code of Conduct proposed revisions for the 25-26 school year. Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, I'd like to welcome our Student Relations Director, Anna Warmbrand, to the podium, along with several of her team members and I think committee members, to make the formal recommendation to the governing board for consideration of changes and modifications to the Student Code of Conduct for the 25-26 school year. Mrs. Warmbrand.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, School Board President, Ms. Ekstrom, Board Clerk, Dr. Shaw, and our esteemed school board members. We are here for our Code of Conduct recommended revisions. And Dr. Trujillo and Mr. Ross, good evening. And you know I never come alone into these spaces, and so we have our small but mighty Department of Student Relations, as well as the ever-consistent Judy Mitchell, who has never, ever missed a Code of Conduct presentation. I must acknowledge that. Most of our committee, I will be honest, is either on vacation or you saw where TEA is in their advocacy space and their travels. And so Jim did message me and remind me of that, and he's here in spirit with our folks. So thank you for that. Here are recommended revisions for your review. Just a reminder, we do have a robust stakeholder committee. We have Ms. Shauna Rodriguez, who represents our district leadership, myself as the facilitator. We have our Robert Snailer principal. We have representation from Tucson High. We definitely have Ochoa and Rincon, Mary Meredith, as I said, Judy is here, Valencia, Pueblo. Michael Arnoff sits on as legal counsel. We have our EDI representatives as well. We have one person from each of our diversity directors. And then TEA is present, and Dan Ireland, and Jim, and Margaret, and Jason. And Jason and Margaret have been consistently on the committee. I just want to acknowledge that for all of the years, all three that I've been here. And then we have Melanie Schiappini, our compliance liaison, and she takes our notes and keeps us moving along and on track, and Mr. Armenta, who is not a voting member. This is a list of our recommended revisions that we'll be bringing this evening. We're going to look at attendance and truancy. We're going to look at derogatory slurs, dangerous items, illicit drug violations, and one new guideline for you. So we'll start right off with attendance and truancy. And I just want to state that this is one of many ways that we would like to address tardy and truancy concerns and issues. We know the Code of Conduct doesn't solve all of the problems. It's just one piece of a puzzle, and I know that there are many dedicated individuals in student success and leadership under Mr. Armenta that are working in tardy and truancy space, as well as the larger district as a whole. So this is just one part of it coming from student relations. So as a committee, I want you to know that we had a lot of stakeholder voice from TEA and Eli in this space. And we went for about 3.5 months just on this issue in terms of how to address tardies and truancy within the Code of Conduct. And so our recommended revision is that we keep tardies a level 1 offense, but that we move truancy into a level 2 space. So I'll just share with you the changes in what that progression would look like with the current progression charts for consequences. Our level 1 offenses, you will max out in terms of exclusion into in-school intervention or in-school suspension, never out-of-school suspension at a level 1 offense for 1 day. Then we're looking at an MTSS plan, and then if need be, the administrator can submit to myself or the regional superintendent a request to elevate discipline to level 2. A level 2 offense, you progress similarly, but the days of exclusion for ISI, in-school intervention, or ISS are extended to a maximum of 3 days. So that's the major difference that you'll see in a level 1 and a level 2 offense in terms of consequence. And we do not have out-of-school suspension as an option or recommendation for truancy, as of course the point of addressing truancy is that our lovely children are in the school, but are also held accountable for what they may be doing. So our recommendation is to have truancy now sit in the level 2 space. And of course, you always have the option of a request to elevate discipline. I will tell you as a practice, it is very unusual for myself or a regional superintendent to ever issue out of school suspension for continued truancy. And just going back to the definitions in this space, having an unexcused absence for at least one period during the day or missing 50% of class time counts as truancy. Your tardies are arriving late to class or after the scheduled start time, but you're still there for about 50% of the class time. So that's our tardies. I'm gonna take a pause. And then when we looked at how we wanted to address it as stakeholders, and I said 3 months of conversation, there's a lot of conversation about potentially creating a separate progression chart. And so a lot of folks thought that that might be an option on the committee. But when it boiled down to it, logically speaking, we all said, you know what? The progression chart for level 2 meets most of our needs. So you'll see that we were split in terms of what progression chart we should use, and we landed on the one that currently exists in the Code of Conduct. So in response to stakeholder concerns about derogatory slurs, and I know that you heard many folks coming to the board at certain periods of time throughout last year and the previous year, I also heard stakeholder feedback from teachers, parents, definitely. As a behavior management committee, we decided to look at refining and adding language to the violations that already exist in the Code of Conduct. We reviewed the policy AC on non-discrimination practices, and we basically utilized that language in this current space, in the AC non-discrimination language, and we took it and we embedded it into 3 different current violations. The first is defiance and disrespect level 2, which is our student-to-student conduct. The next is defiance and disrespect level 3, which is student to teacher or student to staff, and then bullying level 3. So if we look at defiance and disrespect level 2, the original policy says engaging in repeated behavior, including but not limited to refusing to follow directions, talking back, or engaging in socially rude actions, and this is student to student. Our recommended revisions take that first part of what I just read, and then we add to it engaging in intentional behavior with another student that insults one's disability, race, color, religion, religious beliefs, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age or national origin, or current or former immigration status, which is covered in policy AC non-discrimination. And what you'll see in the defiance and disrespect towards authority non-compliance level 3 is you'll see again that exact language placed into the disrespect category. And we really talked about, the list, right? Do we want to place in the policy as a recommended revision the exhaustive list that sits in AC? And as a committee, we felt strongly about that, in particular, voices from TEA. So I just want you to know that that was a debate as opposed to me coming to you and saying, refer to policy AC, right? So we have the actual language spelled out for you in this space. And the disrespect, the original language reads engaging in intentional behavior with staff that insults one's race, appearance, professionalism, general insults, insults that involve curse words, throwing objects at the staff member, destroying classroom property belonging to the staff member. And then we've added that additional language out of AC. And we had a majority of folks in this space that felt very comfortable moving forward with this within the policy violation language. And then we'll look at bullying, and you can see in the bold print, it's the same language that we see in both defiance and disrespect level 2 and 3 placed into that bullying violation. I'll give you just a moment. And our entire committee of stakeholders agreed with having that language in our bullying violation. Next, we're back to talk about alcohol and tobacco this evening. Last year around this time, we looked at our marijuana violation for share and moving that into a level 4 space. And our stakeholders, particularly our ELI members, were quite adamant that we look at tobacco and alcohol and moving share, never sale, always share, to match the marijuana violation level. Currently, we have students that are sharing cigarettes, vape, nicotine, alcohol, and they can be excluded for up to 180 days because the share is still a level 5 offense. Whereas their friend might be sharing marijuana and will only get 30 days of out-of-school suspension. And so we are asking that alcohol, tobacco align in terms of violation and number of days of out-of-school suspension with the marijuana share violation that you all approved this time last year. And that just shows you what that would look like. And again, that matches what the marijuana share is. All of these are long-term suspendable offenses. All of these go to long-term suspension hearings. All of these students are giving resources and support. And there's always an option to request to elevate discipline if you have a severe case of sharing or something. In any of these spaces, the administrator can always request to elevate the discipline to myself, the regional superintendent. And so there's always an option for a level 5, but we're just asking that kids that are smoking cigarettes get the same amount of consequence as kids that are smoking marijuana, because right now they get more, potentially. And we had almost all agreement in this space. I will tell you, there were some voices that thought about all of illicit drug share being potentially moved to a level 4. So that's why you see one person. Guidelines. So as we become more comfortable as a committee with the document and we really start looking at each piece in it, we have some current language that we'd like to bring to you to revise. This is in our guidelines. So principals and assistant principals, APs, must communicate with student relations immediately before suspending a student or to review the use of ISI and abeyances. We have many, hundreds and hundreds of suspensions, ladies and gentlemen, still below a national average, but definitely for a district our size. There is no way that every principal can call me before they suspend a student. We're talking in-school suspensions, right? This refers to in-school suspension. We're talking about 1 day out-of-school suspensions, all the way up to 180 days. And really, the fact of the matter is, we have shared responsibility. I work very closely with our regional superintendents. And so when we looked at these guidelines, Shauna Rodriguez said, well, let's meet with the regional superintendents and talk about this, and we did. And so this is drafted not only from the committee, but also with the support of our 5 regional superintendents. So regional assistant superintendent and director of student relations will continuously review all suspensions. In the case of some level 4 and 5 offenses, it is critical that the regional superintendent be contacted. So these are the 4 categories. If law enforcement or school safety was contacted, if the offense qualifies for an expulsion, if the violation is school interruption level 4, or if the violation involves simulated firearms. And currently, I'm notified, as is my compliance liaison, when any of these things occur, because we process for long-term suspensions and support paperwork in all of those spaces. So we're aware of these, and we just want to make sure that our regional superintendents are working in partnership as well. And then, change in guidelines for how administrators communicate suspensions. This was a slam dunk for everyone. We're just really matching recommended revision for policy to current practices. And lastly, dangerous items level 3. We had a number of incidents this past year in which students were suspended for bringing butter knives that they were simply using to, in one instance, a student brought a butter knife to make some avocado toast before their benchmark assessment because they wanted to have enough of a healthy breakfast. And the child was suspended for bringing a knife to school. We had another incident where we had a learner with an IEP who was given a plastic butter knife in the cafeteria to use for their lunch and became agitated and this was added on as a potential suspension option for a dangerous item. We've had parents appeal this in the space of butter knives, and so we're simply asking that we do not include a butter knife in our dangerous items, as we have been processing appeals for the use of butter knives for simply eating food. That was fully stakeholder supported as well. And that is our recommended revisions for this coming school year for your review.
Governing board members, any questions? Dr. Shaw, and then Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, President Ekstrom, and thank you, Ms. Warmbrand, and for your team for all this work. Before we approve any changes, we would always look back and make sure that the code of conduct and the revisions we made, I think, was it 2 years ago, is meeting the needs of the district and addressing the issues of racial disparities that we know exist nationwide. Can you speak to the data you've collected over the last year and what it means in terms of like our racial disparities in TUSD?
Well, I always bring a piece of paper with me that has numbers because I know this board enjoys their data. I would like to tell you that for the first time in a decade, we have no risk ratios for any ethnicity ending this school year. We've double checked through. I had David Scott analyze the data, all of our disciplinary systems, and it's really amazing. We've seen red and yellow for risk ratios for African American students, Hispanic students, Native American students throughout the years ending, and we ran for all violations, minor and major, for all ethnicities, and it came up green for the first time in a decade. And that is a huge team effort. I think that being with Dr. Schroeder, being with Roxana Begay-James, being with Maria, being with all of our equity directors, with Mr. Armenta and dropout prevention, alternative ed, and then working with the regionals and site principals in these spaces has made a huge difference. And so that's just huge news. And I have been waiting to see green for so long and just patiently working with the data in our disciplinary processes. And that's not to say, well, job done. It just means that we're starting off this next school year in a good space. There'll still be risk ratios that come and go, variability. But thank you for asking. Yes, right now we are all in green for this last school year for the first time in a decade.
That's great news. Thank you.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Hi, Ms. Warmbrand.
Hi.
Thank you for presentation. Thank you to your staff. You're always always here with just, I don't know, you're smiling the whole time we're sitting there. You're just cute, so sorry. Okay, 2 questions, actually. So I kind of want to go to the butter knife. How
Yes,
many
ma'am.
times has happened?
We've had...
Well, just, I mean, I know you said the twice, but has there been more instances?
We've had 4 instances that have come to the extent of my department, and then 2 appeals that myself or the regional superintendent had to process.
Okay, so with those 4 violations, quote unquote, were they thrown out, I guess, for lack of a better word?
The 2 that went to an appeal were, and let me clarify, it's not that kids don't use knives for things, but if they're threatening, that's a different violation.
Yeah.
It's not related to the butter knife, right? The butter knife itself is as harmful as any other blunt object may be if somebody wants to use it in a bad way.
Okay. Yeah. It's just one of those things, but you don't really think about. But then you
Yes.
hear about the ex-ed student that got
Yes.
agitated, right? So that becomes a danger, but then also,
Yes.
does that ex-ed student understand that
Mhm.
danger depending upon their, so there's a lot of factors. So I appreciate that. I also, just a comment in my last question, I appreciate everybody making tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana on the same level. It seemed counterintuitive, and apologies that we did not catch that sooner as a board, perhaps. And then lastly, I wanted the tardies and truancy revisions. So tardies remain at a level 1. I know, I'm not going to try to totally call my kid out, but as a high school parent, you know,
Oh,
there's,
yes.
yes, right, there's
I feel it.
sleeping
Yes.
and
Yes.
running late to first period.
Yes.
So I do appreciate the fact, I don't, and not just for my child, but for all kids in that instance, that they're not losing any of their instruction time. So,
Correct.
and I understand, you know, obviously that truancy is its own separate issue, so
Yes.
I appreciate that designation.
That was important as we had parents on the stakeholder, myself as well as a Badger parent, and mornings with 3 teenagers here in the district. Yes, yes. Tardies and truancy are different. Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you for your presentation. I was going to ask a similar question to Ms. Luna Rose about tardiness and truancy. Is that typically enforced like after first period?
Yes, in terms of a practice with our high schools, they'll have a window of time. Typically, each high school, depending on their start bell, their security, when they secure gates, will have a window of time in which you can get to class, and you know they're not going to count hundreds of kids just tardy. But after that point, then you will see tardies come up, and then after that 50% of class time, they can be considered truant.
Okay. Is there like, is it standardized? So like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, it'll be considered a tardy?
It isn't standardized for every single high school because it's really a matter of how much time they can take to lock each of their opening gates, and that depends on the size of their campus and the amount of security personnel. But it's definitely not a large window. I don't know of any school that has more than 10 minutes, and that's being generous. Most sit within the 3 to 5 range.
But for like 2nd through 7th period, like when students are supposed to already be there and maybe they're lingering in the hallway, is there a standardization as far as like, will 3 minutes or 5 minutes or what have you be considered tardy?
There isn't a district standardization for minutes. Each high school addresses it based upon how quickly they can conduct their tardy sweeps and how much staff they have in that space, because every time you initiate one of those processes, you pull someone from another area. So that part isn't standardized, but again, we try and stay within that 2 or 3 minute range before folks are then entering those tardies.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
For sure. And our department goes to every high school. We check ISI rooms. We look at attendance and tardy sweeps. So that's something we do every year. And we're happy to look at any spaces that need to be.
Okay. And then last, if this policy is approved, how will you go about notifying staff about the changes as well as the students and the parents?
So we have processes that we've engaged with annually, and it's on our to-do list. The team just went over it last week. And we first start with our presentation deck for administrators. We work with Dr. Hewitt and Heidi Aranda in terms of time for our beginning of school year. At that point in time, we hand out their new code of conduct books, and we present in partnership with Mr. Arnoff and Mr. Ross any new statutes, policies, and then our new code of conduct. And so that happens right away. At that time, we also share with them their link, and within that link and within our student relations teams page, they will find a deck, and it will be a training deck for staff. It will be a training deck for students, and it will be a training deck for parents as well. And we work with Luis in translation to make sure that we have all of our languages represented. And of course, our code of conduct is bilingual English-Spanish. And so we go over for them where the links are. And then they have a time frame within the first quarter when they hand in their monthly discipline report to our department, where they have to mark the date that each of these was done so that we can verify that that's been done. I also work with Carla and her communications team, and we make sure that that's up and it's ADA compliant, and Sally does all of that wonderful work so that that's posted up right away. And then we begin the August tour, which is with our departments. We work with just about every department you can imagine by invite. and we work with them. I've worked with the substitute office. Transportation, we always present to safety and security. We always present to all of our equity departments. And so we spend the first quarter really going throughout the week, and we're presenting. And then if there's sites that feel like they'd like some support to do their staff presentation, then our department will show up and I'll do that presentation as well.
Okay. And then as far as like the beginning of the school year for students, can you explain more about how students are notified of the consequences of their actions, especially ones that we see over and over again? Like, do they sign a contract or something like that?
We do not currently have a signed contract component in the Code of Conduct. The committee has discussed it previously. It's the management piece of it, of collection, and then what do you do if they don't sign it, right? So that's something that I know sits with Eli in their advocacy space. And so we're always open to adapting that piece as well. It definitely has come up for discussion. We do not have it now, but we do track the dates that that's been given, and we do have the expectation that that is shared with students. And when we do meet with deans and ISI folks, we also train them and make sure their students are, and we have a lot of folks in schools, and so they also let us know that those assemblies have been done. So in that space, they are providing dates that those have been done, and they should be sharing them. And we have one for secondary and we have one for elementary as well. And it talks about changes and what the violation progression is and what the consequences are as well.
Okay, because I don't know, maybe your team can review that, because, you know, kids are kids, and there's a lot that happens within school and outside of the school that they may not realize will hold such a heavy consequence. It may just seem like fun and games until something bad happens. And so I would like more review of something like that, so, you know, our students won't, I guess, go down a bad road.
Thank you for that. And we can definitely look at where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, for kids, and how we can guarantee that they're receiving that information and they understand it. We will definitely go back as a department and discuss that piece. Of course, the committee won't adjourn again until August, so it wouldn't be something we decide on until we saw our folks again in August, but we can definitely start thinking about suggestions for next year 100%.
Thank you.
Mr. Romero.
So I'm like the progression chart for tardies versus truancy. I think that's heading in the right direction. Question that I have, let's start with tardies.
Yes.
And it says arriving at school or class after the scheduled start time. If the student misses 50% of the class time, they're considered absent. So where is this 50% number coming from? Why are we grabbing 50%?
So it just depends on their beginning and start time for that class period. So it's up to the teacher, right, to be like, whoa, what are you coming in? Well, you miss half the class. You're 51% of this class time. And then that's when they would mark if we're having a truancy issue.
So,
and they can select it in observations and synergy as a minor. So that's how they do reporting, and it cues to their site administrator.
So I guess one of my other follow-up questions is, why are we so lax when it comes to this in regards to tardy? If we understand that our children learn when they're in their seats, children are not learning when they're not in their seats, why are we giving them such a long time of, you can miss up to half of your class, basically you've lost half of your instruction time. You come in 50% of the class, you're a distraction to the rest of the students, you're a distraction to the teacher. There's so many other things that are going along with it. I'm just wondering why we just have such a lax number. Has it always been this way? What are we getting from our teachers? Because I'm sure they're not happy with 50% of the time. I know most of them, if they want to be successful in their job, they want to have their students probably in those seats 90% of the time. So I just don't understand why we just give them 50%. That just seems too, you can skip half the class and you're not considered tardy.
So that number has sat in the Code of Conduct policy since I came aboard. I look back at Mr. Arnold for historical context, but that 50% number has been the number that was decided at one point. Previous to our department or my leadership here, Mr. Arnold?
I guess I'll just pipe up to say that we're looking right now. I believe that it is actually comes from a statutory basis that has to do with whether we're sort of considering whether ADE or the state of Arizona considers that student as having been in the seat if they haven't attended more than 50% of the class. Are you going to jump in here? Great.
I found it in the policy. I'm going to see if it's in statute as well, because that's already policy, not just in the Code of Conduct, but in JE-R. But I'm going to see if it might come from statute, which is possible since there's money attached to attendance, right? So they might have a.
I think that's where we adapt.
Yeah. Okay, so then if it's statute, again, I guess just, again, I'll wait to hear back from you on that. Then the same thing goes with truancy. So what's the difference between truancy and absenteeism?
So truancy can mean that they're attending part of their day, a part of it, and absent is just they just never showed up. But it's almost like a rectangle and a square, right? They fit within each other, but there are instances in which one is not necessarily the other. Like if they come in halfway through class, yes, they were absent for the first half, but we consider it truant because they are on campus and they are with us for part of that time. If they never showed up, then they're completely absent. And so chronic absenteeism can look like a truancy violation, but not always. It depends, what it's coded and if parents are excusing it and things of that nature.
So if there's a chronic, as we know, chronic absenteeism, not just with our district, with a lot of districts across, Pima County, is there also chronic truancies we have going on also?
Yes, although I will say that we only have 17 incidents of minor truancy in which suspension was issued just for that truancy space. Normally, the kid will find themselves some trouble. It's not just that they're not there and, reading a book under a tree, although that does happen occasionally. It's in that space, they're also doing other violations that are in with the Code of Conduct. So you'll see most of our tardy and truancy violations, particularly truancy, as a secondary violation when a child has had a suspendable offense, like marijuana vape use, or defiance and disrespect, they won't go back to class, or minor disruption or something of that nature. And so it typically partners itself. But we did have 17 individual instances in which suspension was issued just for that and nothing more. But it's not so much that there's suspendable offenses, although they're missing out on learning and the teachers are, up to here in that space, 100%. And we hear from that stakeholder voice with TEA strongly, for sure.
And then also, and again, this might be part of state statute, having the 50% of the class time gives truancy again. So I don't know if that's district-wise or state. So I'm going to ask Rob Ross and Mike Fairenough to look at those things. So my next question is, we know tardies in the high school level is probably related to the students. When it comes to elementary schools and some junior highs, we know it's not the students, it's the parents. What are we doing for a code of conduct for our parents that are neglecting to accept these tardies as, or letting them know that they need to be on time?
So in our elementary portion of the Code of Conduct, we don't have the tardy or truancy piece. Because we know exactly to your point, they do not drive themselves to school. In our middle school, we do, and in our high school, we do for tardies. Although I will say, as Ms. Luna Rose did express, it is awfully hard to get the high schoolers on time sometimes. So for that first period tardy, I would say there's probably a shared responsibility, and I do know for a lot of our high schools, Tucson High in particular, they take the bus and they get dropped off at the Ronstadt and they walk, right? So if there's bus issues, they miss a bus, whatever it may be. So first period tardies are unique, and I know that our site administrators would agree to that. In the other spaces, you're right, our secondary students are responsible for their tardies once they're on that campus. And so aside from communicating consequences via our parent presentations in the code of conduct, the code of conduct is for student discipline spaces, right? It's not an adult response for accountability. However, I do know that there's lots of different ways that districts have interacted, that I've worked with, and I'm happy to always work with the superintendent's office and Joe Hallam's and any of our other, departments to look at how you address the adult piece. That wouldn't sit within our student code of conduct, but I do understand because there is a shared responsibility. Absolutely.
And then just one more thing, because I did a school visit. I'm not going to name the school, but when I was there, a student came on in, and after he was tardy. School started at 8:30, and he showed up at like 11:30. And I just kind of made a comment about it, and they said, yeah, he has to get himself to school. He takes the bus. When the office manager was giving a hard time, he's like, oh yeah, well I was playing games with my buddies till 3 in the morning, and I just didn't wake up because my phone was dead, and blah 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 blah. And she had kind of mentioned, unfortunately, he shows up to school between 10 and 12. One time during the year, he came at 9 o'clock, and that was, a celebration, even though school started at 8:30. Just seeing some of those things that are happening in some of our schools is discouraging, again, because I'm sure the teachers upset with that because the student has great potential to learn more if they're in that seat. And I don't know how else we can be a better service. Again, I know this is the exception and not the rule, but I want to make sure we don't leave those kids out there and not giving them all the tools they need to succeed. And I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And then, it's going the wrong direction. I'm so sorry. When we look at the progression chart in that student's case, that student should have an MTSS plan, a referral, a check-in, a check-out, a safe adult who's monitoring and communicating consistently with parents. That's part of that wonderful piece that you all approved a couple of years ago, is them having a plan in that space. So that's the question to ask when site administrators come. I say, okay, let me pull up their MTSS plan. Let's look at their behavior goal. And I really hope then they have one, right? Because it's policy, it's in the code of conduct. So in that space then, if they need help, they can reach out to our department. We will have someone come on site. They can reach out to any of our directors that sit under Mr. Armenta. They will send someone out in that space. Dropout prevention can come to the home and check in with that student. And so we do have resources in-house to support those particular learners, and a PBIS system all of our high schools are utilizing in some capacity. So there's always an incentive option. So those are just some options that site administrators have that they can utilize in those spaces, but it isn't an easy solve.
Governing board members, since this is study action, how would you like to proceed? Yes, Dr. Shaw.
I'll move to approve the recommended changes.
I'll second.
A motion has been made by Dr. Shaw and seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. This Tucson High parent is very, very happy tonight, school board. Thank you so much.
Next is item 8.3, Governing Board Policy JICA Student Dress Revision, first read. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Ekstrom, I'll turn the item over to either Governing Board Member Romero or Shaw. Both of them had requested a revisiting of the student dress code, so either one of them would be able to do the honors here.
Wow. I asked for this like 2 years ago, maybe. I'm happy it's back here, but I'll defer to Mr. Romero because I wasn't expecting to present on this.
So, and I'm glad we have an opportunity to revisit this. As you all know, I have a chance to visit all of our schools, and I do look at the code of, or the dress code, as I know I voted against the revisions on that, and I've talked to a lot of principals at some of our junior highs and high schools that have a lot of concerns of what has happened because of that. They had a much, well, they've definitely had students that have pushed the limits on some of these things, and I have gone to some schools where I always thought it was questionable, especially if it was my granddaughter that was going to school dressed like some of these other young ladies that were dressed and were able to get away with. But to advocate for my principals and assistant principals, I wanted to give them an opportunity to express their concerns, what they saw, good, bad, or indifferent, because I know I have my views and opinions, and I can come and read a list from principals and assistant principals that I've talked to that had to deal with the, with this issue. But I want to give them the opportunity to be unanimous in replying to this and being able to voice what they've seen and their concerns are. So I just want to have that opportunity to reverse it back to that area based on input from staff and teachers.
Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that this is back on the agenda. I think that many staff members were caught off guard that, we had removed some of this language, and it definitely had a snowball effect in how it changed the school environment, especially for those staff who worked so hard to get some semblance of, control or order, and things just kind of went out the window. TUSD has a very lax approach to students, dressing appropriately. Other school districts around us do not have this similar policy, and I think it's one of the reasons why many parents are pulling their students from our school, is because we don't push our students to have a higher standard or treat the school as a learning environment. And so I think instituting this language back into the policy can do a lot for our district, and even for our students who may feel pressure to dress in a certain way because it's become a trend and it's very typical. Oh, I do want to mention though, the headwear stuff is kind of contradictory. First it says hats and other head coverings are not permitted on school grounds except as an expression of religious beliefs, but then it says that, hats can be worn outside for an extended period of time. So, they're allowed to take it in to the school grounds, but can only wear it outside. I don't know. As someone who wears hats inside, I would not be able to survive with this policy.
Is there a motion? Governing board members, other discussion? Yes, Ms.
Ekstrom.
Rose.
Thank you. So, speaking as a high school parent, and I just think that this is, and I understand people have their beliefs, but my belief that I think that dress codes are inherently sexist, and they continue to be inherently sexist. They target girls. Nobody's talking about looking at the boy's chest, the boy's behind. It's always the girl. And it's an enforcement of gender norms and impacting our LGBTQ students who may be identifying as what they perhaps were not born as. And I think it just reinforces the idea that female bodies are inherently vulgar. And I don't appreciate that as a mother, as a woman, and as a mother of a 17-year-old daughter who's going to be a senior. Do they like to push the envelope? Sure. Have I heard some of the office people point out, because I do go on campus quite often? Yes. But I just sort of think that putting these in is also contradictory to, the first bullet point: students must wear clothing including a shirt or pants or skirt or equivalent. and that clothing must cover undergarments and must not be see-through. I feel like that we're just, I just think putting that in is, again, focusing strictly on female students and those who identify as female. So I do not support adding this language back in this evening.
Dr. Shaw?
Thank you, President Ekstrom. And I appreciate the intention of trying to create a professional environment in our schools. This is where our students are, majority of, a plurality of the year is at schools. And I will agree with Ms. Luna Rose. I think the dress code policy as is already requires wearing clothing, including shirt or pants, skirt or the equivalent. And as she mentioned, the undergarments must be covered, must not be see-through. I think that really addresses what we expect from our students. And all four of us who are TUSD parents, all of us have daughters. And I'll be blunt, and this is absolutely no offense to Principal Peebles, but I don't want my 8th grader next year to have her male principal going around and saying, you have too much of your chest uncovered, or your shorts are too high and I see too much of your buttocks. I don't want her male principal to be doing that to my 13-year-old daughter. And I think one of the reasons we changed the language was because of enforcement obviously being not equivalent between males and females, and expectations being this is just borne on to our female students, and also of not wanting our administrators to be the ones looking at our students' chests and buttocks and other areas and our navel, determining, oh, there's too much, let's get a ruler, back to the old, ruler days of the even before our age, of measuring, knees to shorts and other kinds of things. And yeah, so, and again, as Ms. Luna Rose, I'll echo it, making sure this is gender neutral, making sure this isn't going to be discriminatory against our LGBTQ plus students is really important, and I am not going to support the changes tonight.
And I will give some comments as well. The only gender that was mentioned here was girls, and that came from one of my colleagues. I'm quite frankly sick and tired of dress codes being balanced on the back of young ladies. That's not what this school district is about. And yes, we do need to protect our LGBTQ plus community, and this does not do it. I also visit schools. I have not had one principal approach me about the dress code. So, if this was a really important issue, I am certain that all of us up here would be receiving emails about this, and we have not. So I do not support this either.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Yes, Ms. Shaw.
The policy is gender neutral, and I've seen both genders wearing inappropriate clothing in our schools. And so what I'm hoping for is that we can create a more professional environment in our schools that mimic the standards outside of school. I mean, could you imagine if I would dress in a crop top to a board meeting? Like, there's a standard when you go to certain areas, when you go to court, for instance. And it's the same with the school, that there should be a certain dress code, whether that it's appropriate. And I also don't want like a male teacher or staff member to, take a ruler to a student's clothing. But really, that hasn't been happening even before we changed the policy, because it makes those staff members uncomfortable. But what makes me uncomfortable is when I'm driving by Tucson High or other schools that are, let out, and I see these men driving slow, glaring at the girls. And, despite what a girl will wear or a woman will wear, there will be predators out there. And so really for me, this is about creating an environment in our schools where, we have high standards and we have high expectations for our students, and every other school district has that except for us.
Mr. Romero?
So unfortunately, I don't wait for principals and administration to ask me questions. I ask questions to get information because I care about what they're going on. In any of my talks with any of the principals, assistant principals, no one's ever talked about anything with the LGBT community. And as far as males, yes, a lot of them will dress with their pants down low or whatever, but usually it's not in a sexual type of manner. But like Ms. Shaw was saying, we're trying to teach our kids to respect their bodies and how they present themselves. We're learning professionalism because when they get a job and they go to McDonald's or wherever they start off, if they wore a shirt that was, their midsection at McDonald's was showing and, their buttocks, as long as their undergarment would go, that's a Hooters type of thing, not a McDonald's thing or a professional environment when you go to work for a retail location or it'd be someplace at the mall. Not to, put any of my principals on, on blast over here, but if Bobby Estrella with Saguaro came with a tank top and short shorts, I don't think anybody's going to want to see that. I'm sorry, Bobby, but it's true. We hold our teachers and everybody else to a higher standard on what they should wear and how they should dress. But we're not doing that to our students. There's too much, I think, of a political thing because it's LGBTQ community. That's not what these people are saying. It's students that are pressing limits, an environment that should be for education and not be distraction. And you can say, well, the guy shouldn't be distracted. Well, that's called human nature. That's how it is. You can put it any way you want, but if, like you said, someone's driving down the road, they go slow because they see something that attracts their eye. Again, obviously this is looking more as a political issue as opposed to the quality of education of our students. We do have some schools that do have uniforms. I would like to see more of those. We have policies that can do that. But for the education aspect of it, I think it's just opened some negative avenues. There's more female principals and assistant principals out there than there are males, and I'm sure there are women that can help where there are male principals that can be, in charge of any type of, challenges on some of these things and say, hey, this is where we need to be. So again, going back into it, obviously there seems to be a continued split on here. What Ms. Shaw and I are looking to do is, make our district look a little bit better and expect more from our children. So obviously, I guess Sadie and I will continue to be on that and fight for those things for our students.
And I'm highly offended that you suggest that I don't speak to principals and ask questions. That's offensive. It's also offensive to state that it's human nature for girls to be gawked at. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, it's not just them. Do you have
well, no,
males?
let me finish my thought, please, Mr. Romero, because I let you speak. We are not even thinking about kids who do not have access to clothing, who are targeted because they don't have a washing machine, they don't have access to clothes. There's a million other things that are happening in this school district that we should be looking at, and this dress code shouldn't be one of them. We should be providing clothing, access to washing machines, all of these things, because some of our kids don't have access to that. And I've seen that just last week. We've had to help a student have access to that. And I'm proud that this district is able to provide that to him because he was having a summer job. And, it's just something that we need to look at further, and this dress code shouldn't be part of that. So I am offended by what you said, and yeah.
Well, we do have resource centers that they can go to get these things, but if you go look at their closets, they're not wearing halter tops in those closets. And when I said I ask them these things, I ask specific questions because I want to know these answers, how these policies are affecting. If a principal was being honest with you, if you ask that exact question, you are going to get some answers. And if you're offended that I said that, it's because I press the limit and I want to know.
Well, if I ask the question and they don't answer, I'm not going to press harder. So again, what is the wishes of this board? Ms. Luna Rose.
I just wanted to make a comment that dress code policies make women's bodies political. And so, just as in its inherent nature, women's bodies are political no matter what. Men's bodies aren't. And so this is what we're teaching. This is a good lesson for students. This is what we're teaching them. And they're taking that, whether they're wearing booty shorts or sweatpants, which most of the time you see kids in the baggy pants in the rips in high school. And men/boys are gonna leer at girls whether or not they're wearing those said booty shorts, or they're wearing a potato sack with Uggs. That's just the nature of where we are, but I just don't appreciate making my daughter's body, her friend's bodies, and mine political.
Yes, but Dr. Shaw.
And I'll just add, one thing that we did when we updated the policy at the last revision is that we made it easier for school communities to go with a uniform dress code policy. And so I encourage anyone listening tonight, if you disagree with the dress code policy as is, we made it easier for you to work with your school community to make a uniform dress code policy, and I would encourage you to pursue that in your own school community.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. Well, again, I don't believe I'm politicizing this issue. This is about raising the standards in our district, and I'm glad Dr. Shaw mentioned the revisions that we did make as far as uniforms. I know that having a uniform at Dodge has made it a lot easier to get out of the house in the morning. It's made it so my daughter doesn't feel so much pressure to align to the standards of American dress, which does sexualize children, let's be honest. And so, if I could have my way, I'd have the whole district have uniforms, because I think it would help with our equity issue. I think it would help students focus more. And so I do invite parents or those on the school council to review this policy and check out the language on page 3 about how to implement uniforms at your school site. But with that, I will move the item.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Ms. Shaw, seconded by Mr. Romero. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No.
Nay.
No.
Motion fails 2-3. Thank you. Next is 10.1, future meeting dates and agenda items. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, we're back here in a week, and we have one of the most exciting items we've had in a long time. We are going to have a donation to the district of $3 million for the upgrading and replacement of scoreboards across the district's high school. So we're very excited to present that to the governing board for its acceptance next week. We also will have a group from Davis with a renaming request or an additional name request for the school. They'll be here to present their case and their request to the governing board. We will also have our second read on the newly revised transportation walk zone policy that would shorten the walk zone from almost 2 miles down to 1 mile, designed to increase ridership throughout Tucson Unified. And lastly, our curriculum and instruction team will be here for its annual update on curricular fidelity and implementation in the district. So we'll be busy.
Great. There's no further.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Ms.
yes, Ms.
I
Linares.
just wanted to make a point that earlier when we voted on consent agenda, we did not mention that Ms. Canty was on that list, and I do believe she's going to be retiring. So I wanted to publicly thank her for all her work as we see her walking around during the board meetings, taking photos, making sure we're smiling, making sure we're looking good and sounding good to the public. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
And true to form, Ms. Canty declined our request to have a very widely publicized goodbye, preferring a quieter exit. But I echo the thanks that we have to extend to Mary Canty for all these wonderful years of service, telling the district's story in an amazing way through her work. We're going to miss you. So thanks again.
We are going to miss you. And if there's no further business, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Oh my God, 8:56. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Have a good evening.